January 28, 2025. It is 7:03. Both adequate and electronic notice of this meeting specifying the time, place, and manner in which such notice was provided in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10:4-6. Specifically, on January 15, 2025, proper notice was sent to the Courier News and the Star Ledger and filed with the clerk at the Township of Bridgewater and posted on the Municipal Bulletin Board. Please be aware of the Zoning Board of Adjustment policy for public hearings. No new applications will be heard after 9:30, and no new testimony will be taken after 10 p.m. If you're able, please rise for the salute to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Good evening, Nancy. If we can get a roll call, please.
Chairman Foose,
Here.
Mr. Widelli,
Here.
Ms. Amin,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Here.
Mr. Fresco,
Here.
Mr. Bongiorno,
Here.
Mr. Gajewski,
Here.
Mr. Sikat,
Here.
Mr. Kulak is absent, Mr. Vesio,
Here.
Mr. Gavitt.
Here.
You have a quorum, you can proceed.
All right. Do we get the professionals on the record?
Ms. Sarmad, manager present, Mr. Burr is present, Kevin Lithwaite, our zoning officer, board secretary, and present also.
Great, thank you. All right, we have some minutes. First up, December 10th, 2024. Comment changes? Okay.
Very one or two typos.
So a motion with some typo corrections, and you'll give them to Nancy and to Kevin? Thank you. Do you have a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Wiley with a second.
I'm sorry, that was December?
December 10th.
Okay, I show Mr. Bongiorno, Mr. Gajewski were absent, so. Give me one moment, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Mr. Bongiorno, I'm sorry, Mr. Wadley,
Yes.
Mr. Seacat,
Yes.
Ms. Amin,
Yes?
Mr.
She made the motion.
Chairman Foose,
Yes.
Mr. Vesio,
Yes.
Mr. Fresco,
Yes.
Mr. Gavitt.
Yes.
All right, next up is January 10th. Comments and/or changes. January 10th?
No corrections.
Okay.
I make
All right, that's Mrs. Amin with the motion. Could I have a second, please?
I second.
proof.
Mr. Widelli?
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mr. Bongiorno,
Yes.
Mr. Wadley,
Yes.
Mr. Seacat,
Yes.
Mrs. Amin,
Yes.
Chairman Foose,
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski,
Yes.
Mr. Vesio,
Yes.
Fresco,
Yes.
Mr. Gavitt.
Yes.
All right, next up, we have professional agreements. We have an agreement to appoint board attorney, appoint board engineer, an agreement to appoint board planner, an agreement to appoint our consulting planner, a professional agreement to appoint our RF engineer. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 professional agreements. Looking for comments or changes on any? If not, can I have a motion,
I
please?
move that we do all five as one bunch.
Okay, do I have a second? Mrs. Amin?
Second.
All right.
Chairman Foose,
Yes.
Mr. Wadley,
Yes.
Mrs. Amin,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Not eligible.
Mr. Sweeney,
Not eligible.
Not
Mr. Fresco,
Yes.
Mr. Bongiorno,
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski,
Yes.
Mr. Seacat,
Yes.
Mr. Kulak. I'm sorry, Mr. Vesio,
Yes.
Mr. Gabbett.
Yes.
All right, next up, we have Solar Landscape, number 3 and 5 Findren Avenue. Looking for comments and changes. Could I have a motion, please?
I move.
Mr. Wiley,
Second.
Mr. Bongiorno.
Chairman Foose.
Yes.
Mr. Wiley.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
I don't believe I'm eligible.
Mr. Fresco.
Yes.
Mr. Bongiorno.
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski.
Yes.
Mr. Seacat.
Yes.
Mr. Kulak. I'm sorry, Mr. Vesio.
Yes.
And Mr. Gabbett.
All right, we're going to move on to our land development applications. Rich, why don't you take us through who's being carried to when, and then we'll get to tonight's case.
So we have several. So we have first 1200 Route 22 Land Investors is being carried to February 11th. There'll be a new notice with respect to that application. Visions and Pathways is being carried to February 11th, also new notice there. Rockland APV Bridgewater Energy LLC is also carried to February 11th. Again, new notice there. 821 Bridgewater LLC and Jewish Community Center is now carried to February 25th of this year, also with new notice. The St. Bernard Church application is being carried to February 25th with new notice. Belly Holdings is being carried to March 11th, also with new notice. CX Towers was being carried to May 27th. However, we didn't receive their signed extension of time for which the board can act. So what I suggest we do with CX Towers is that we dismiss it without prejudice, and then when we have their signed extension, we can reinstate it. And then there's also Germunk Oil is being carried to March 25th. That notice is also pending new. And Bridgewater Self-Storage is now on March 25th as well, also with notice. So we should talk about CX Towers. And again, since we don't have an extension of time in which to act, I suggest that we dismiss that application without prejudice, and the applicant can reinstate it once they provide us with the signed extension.
All right, very good. So the board, we're going to entertain a motion to dismiss without prejudice.
I move.
All right, Mr. Wiley, you have a second, please.
Second.
Mr. Bongiorno.
Chairman Foose.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski.
Yes.
Very good. All right, moving on. Anyone that's here for the Starbucks case, as Rich just mentioned, that has been moved. They were deficient in their notice, so tonight's only case is going to be the Paul Miller Group, Route 22 West. Mr. Silbert, all ready to go. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members.
Hey, Mike, before you do that, let me just back up to Starbucks again, okay? Because they did send out their certified mailings, which were fine. They had a problem with the newspaper getting it in timely. So that application just has to publish. So I'm going to announce the new date, which will be March 11th for Starbucks. So anyone in the audience here for Starbucks, that application is being heard on March 11th. There'll be no further certified mail notices from the applicant, but there will be a publication notice. Okay?
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you. So my name is Michael Silbert. I am an attorney from the law firm DeFrancesco Bateman, located in Warren Township, New Jersey. And I have the privilege of representing the applicant this evening, Paul Miller Auto Group LLC. This is an application for preliminary and final major site plan approval with C and D variance relief concerning property located at block 559, lot 5.02, as shown on the township's tax maps, now known as 1207 US Route 22 West. The property is located in the township's GC zone and is the former location for the Gannett Courier News Building. The property is now largely vacant. It's an honor for me to be involved with this application. which has truly been in the works for a number of years. The applicant has paid very close attention to existing dealerships throughout the township and has tried its best to incorporate successful design elements from those dealerships while also working to eliminate those certain design elements that have not worked as well for other dealerships. So over the years, we have taken in feedback from various township professionals to refine the design before you this evening. This is a zoning board application because the GC zone district does not explicitly permit new car dealerships. Notably, the GC zone conditionally permits existing car dealerships and their expansion. However, a D1 use variance is required because the proposed car dealership constitutes a new car dealership, which is, again, not explicitly listed as among the permitted or conditionally permitted uses in the GC zone. This location is ideal for the proposed use with the Honda dealership to the west and the Acura dealership to the east, among many other car dealerships in the immediate vicinity of the property. We feel that the proposed use is benign, so there are no nearby residential properties. This use is not a high traffic generator, limited truck traffic, for example, and we believe it will help attract a high-end clientele to Bridgewater, which will support many of the nearby retail businesses and restaurants in Bridgewater. The property is ideal for Land Rover. In case I hadn't mentioned, this is for a Land Rover dealership. Due to its close highway proximity, notwithstanding the ordinance, we believe this is a proposed use that fits very well with the surrounding area. Not only does this add significant value to the Bridgewater community, but it also benefits all of Somerset County residents by providing a convenient location for Land Rover vehicle services. This will eliminate the need for residents to have to travel long distances to either Edison or Princeton. So Somerset County and Bridgewater Township in particular deserves a dealership of this caliber to serve its residents and further support the area's already vibrant and successful retail and restaurant establishments. The applicant is also seeking bulk variances, which will be discussed in further detail during our presentation. These include relief related to signage, the number of loading spaces, loading and parking space sizes, and setback relief for the proposed building and parking area. Notably, all the setback relief being sought is consistent with the setbacks of the surrounding properties and buildings within this portion of the Route 22 corridor. Mr. McDonough will testify that the properties in the GC zone fronting along this section of Route 22, due to their size and configuration, physically or realistically would not be able to comply with the setback requirements set forth in the ordinance. I thought the board and the public may be amused to know that this application is part of a national rollout or rebranding by Land Rover. So I'm going to refer to this as Land Rover, but Land Rover will no longer be known as a single brand. Moving forward, there will be 3 distinct brands: Range Rover, Defender, and Discovery. So again, while I may refer to the umbrella Land Rover term throughout the hearing, the branding structure is partially the reason, or really the main reason why we've submitted the signage package in connection with this application. So just some major points of emphasis I would like the board and the public to be aware of is that the applicant went to great lengths to design the site plan to ensure that no parking would be located in the front. The front of the property only has display areas for vehicles with no general parking spaces. I also just want to add that due to locations of the proposed stormwater detention basins in the front of the property, vehicles cannot and will not be allowed to be parked in the front yard and the grass areas. The applicant, as a condition of approval, is willing to stipulate that all vehicles must be parked in the appropriately designated parking spaces on site. And again, the applicant took concerns about front yard parking very seriously and was committed to creating a model dealership in appearance for Bridgewater Township. Similarly, the applicant formally commits not to parking or allowing any cars to be parked in the fire access lanes or emergency lanes. In preparing for tonight's hearing, I and our team recognized that signage would likely be a major sticking point for the board, so I like to take what I perceive to be any of those sticking points head on and early on in the application process. So the need for relief for the 3 freestanding signs stems in part from the presence of 3 distinct brands, as I had mentioned earlier. The square footage of the signage may appear like a large number on paper, but the actual design is tasteful, simple, and clean. The signage proposal comes directly from Land Rover's national rebranding strategy to ensure consistency across all dealerships nationwide. So this sign package, it's Land Rover's hope that this sign package will be implemented across the country. It's envisioned that each vehicle brand will have a freestanding sign, and the idea is to create a recognizable brand image, but yet with low impact. Another thing I just thought the board should be aware of right off the start is that the signs will sit back approximately 90 feet from Route 22 if you include the 70-foot right-of-way, thus further minimizing their visual impact. So while it's technically a setback of 20 feet from the property line, its impact will be felt by the public based upon approximately 95 feet of a setback from the highway. The applicant intends to call 6 witnesses who will provide testimony in support of this application. Our first witness is David Fincy. He's development manager for Paul Miller and a representative of the applicant, and he's going to start off by providing some operational testimony and some background to the board about this application. Mark Walker is our professional engineer. We're going to have 2 architects address the architectural testimony, Dan Bartolus and James Hunter. We have Craig Paraguay here, our traffic engineer and traffic expert. And then we're going to conclude with John McDonough, who's going to put the proofs on the record to support the variance relief we're seeking this evening. I just have a few housekeeping items from the professional review memos I'd like to just discuss and put on the record. The application received no objections from traffic safety in the police department, zoning officer, and environmental and health officer. We did receive a fire review memo dated January 27th, 2025 from Mr. Scalera, which I thank him for getting that over to us. It's very helpful. And I'll leave it to our professionals to discuss that in greater detail, although I don't believe there's any issues with complying with the suggestions, and we'll confirm the fire truck template that we used to calculate the turning radius. We also received a sewer utility memo dated January 10th, 2025 from Mr. Genova, Director of Sewer Utility, and the applicant can comply with all of those review comments. We received an engineering review memo dated January 23rd, 2025 from the board's engineer, Bill Burr. We will obviously provide testimony as requested. We can comply with most of the requested revisions unless we otherwise indicate this evening. Notably, I can go through these. I'll try to say them slowly, but we can comply with A6 on page 3, A8, and B2.
Well, Mike, I'd rather do that with
I don't
the
have to do that.
testimony.
It's fine,
Yeah.
no problem. So on that note, Mr. Chairman, if I could have, well, actually, let me just confirm that that our notice, Mr. Oler, was proper.
Yeah, there's
and
a
that-
couple things. So, yes, the board does have jurisdiction. Notice was in proper form, sent by certified mail on January 3rd, published on the same day, so the board has jurisdiction. What I'd like to do is get your 6 witnesses up. We'll swear everybody in, and while they're coming up, let me just make a correction on something I said before. I just heard from a little birdie that the Starbucks application is going to be heard on February 11th. I think I previously said, what did I say, March 11th before? So Starbucks is being carried to February 11th with no further notice from the applicant other than the publication, okay, for the public. All right, so why don't we get your 6 folks up here, and yes. It's not February 11th?
No, it's
May I
311 here.
correct the record, Mr. Aller, if you don't mind? Starbucks, we announced from the agenda would be, the original announcement was fine on that. It's 1200 Route 22. They were initially scheduled for 211. They've requested an adjournment, and we're scheduling that for 325.
So, I'm sorry, Starbucks. I just care about Starbucks, right? So
Starbucks is correct, the continuance on 311.
on 311.
Correct.
So I was right the first time.
Yes.
So 1,200.
Yes. I don't care about that. That's a new notice anyway. Yeah. Okay, so again, for the public,
Starbucks is being carried to March 11th without further notice, okay? Everybody else is new notice anyway, so I don't care. All right, if you guys would all stand up, raise your right hands, everybody. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, you might go my left or right, if you would, just for the record, state your names, please.
John McDonough.
Mark Walker.
Thank you, everyone. We're good to go.
So with that, I'm going to call my first witness, which is David Fincy. And Dan, or you want to sit?
Well, Mr. Silbert, I got to ask you, so you wanted to talk about signs up front, you wanted to take it on head on. I mean, do you want to talk signage first off?
That's a good suggestion. Are you okay doing that?
No, these are your words.
I don't know if you wanted to
It
hear.
was my words. Do you want to see if we could tackle that issue from the start?
Sure. It's not a problem. I don't know if you wanted to hear the history and everything, you know, why we're here today.
Listen, Mr. Silbert said he wanted to attack it head on. I know some of the other board members wanted to talk about it. I'd love to talk about it. All right, let's look at the signs. Ma'am, can I help you? In the green shirt back there?
Hard of hearing.
Okay. Gotcha. We'll make sure we'll get everybody on microphone. Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, sometimes people don't talk into the microphone, so we'll keep on then. Yes, ma'am.
Not right now, that's going to be for later,
This is not
okay?
Starbucks. Can we clarify, ma'am?
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Okay, we have proofs from the applicant's attorney that they were mailed on time. That's all he has to do. If the post office doesn't deliver it, it's not on the applicant. So however long it takes for the post office to deliver, that's just what it is. The law says that he has to mail them at least 10 days prior to the hearing, which he did.
Rich, just clarify, I thought I heard her say that this is Starbucks.
Oh, and this is not the Starbucks application. Are you here for Starbucks? This is the Paul Miller Auto application. No, those are for Paul Miller. Starbucks is bouncing around a little, but Starbucks is on, will be March 11th. March 11th. Correct. Correct.
3 times.
I understand. They had to be adjourned. So Starbucks is not tonight. Starbucks is March 11th. Yes. Okay. You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Silbert, all yours.
All right. So for the record, can we just have your name, please? No.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Better.
James Hunter, registered architect in the state of New Jersey for 26 years.
And that was Hunter, Hunter?
Hunter.
Okay. Okay.
And for the benefit of the board, can you just give a little bit of more information about your background so that the board can accept you as a professional witness?
Of course, I'm the Senior Vice President of Design with EI Associates. I've been in registered architect for over 30 years in different states. I have provided testimony in New Jersey and Pennsylvania on a variety of different projects. And I am well aware of the intention of the signs and the nature of the design, so I'm ready to speak on.
All right, this board accepts you as an expert in architecture and on signage.
Great, thank you very much.
Why don't we mark that before we get too far into what it is, okay? So A1?
We can mark that exhibit. It looks like proposed layout exhibit. Mark it as A1.
Yep.
Date on there.
Let's see, the date is 1/28/25.
Yes.
And this exhibit is prepared by Mark Walker, who will be our engineering expert.
Okay.
All right, so I'm putting this, relating to the site plan, just to indicate location of the signage. There's signage on the building, as you can see in drawing. This is Exhibit 2.
So this was submitted with their application, so I don't know if you want to mark it.
Well, let's mark it, because,
Okay.
so we
Drawing
can follow it.
A3, which shows the signage that will appear on the building, as well as freestanding signs that we're proposing.
What sheet is that?
So we'll mark this exhibit as A2, and it's entitled Site and Building Signage Details, sheet A3 of the architectural.
What page is this on?
A3 in the architectural. We'll mark it as an exhibit A2.
Only because we're going to keep bouncing back to it, so.
That's fine.
Site and building, what is it?
Site and Building Signage Details.
Thank you.
So drawing A3 indicates the different signage that we are proposing for the building, some of which are on the building, and others that we were proposing 3 freestanding signs out front. As Michael had mentioned, the Land Rover name is changing to 3 separate brands: Range Rover, Defender, and Discovery. Because of that change, the idea is to have 3 separate signs, each with the branding image of those different names. These will be staggered, right back to the site plan here, in this location as you're driving up to the site. Okay, so it's in this location right here. So the idea that these are staggered, these are three different signs to indicate the 3 different brands that the dealership
Put
is.
them out one more time where the 3 are gonna.
The location, sir?
Please.
Okay. Right down here. Right at the entrance to the site.
Why can't you put 3 names on one sign?
Well, this aligns with the image of developing and being the national first store dealership with this branding. It's a strong image to present 3 different signs, just as it would be if there were 3 different dealerships on the site. We want to emphasize the fact that it's 3 different names for 3 different vehicles that are being sold at this facility.
Couldn't you do that on one sign?
Well, again, this is relating to how we want to brand the sales of the vehicles to give each its own image, and it aligns with the signage that would be on the building itself. Do we have the building elevation here? Thank you. This is drawing A2,
Mr. Ullard,
elevations.
Mr. Ullard, do we want to just mark this architectural plans?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
The application.
So the building-mounted signs, there are also 3 separate signs, one for each brand?
Yes, correct, right here. You can see them here.
I can't see them from that far, so
I can
help
bring it
me,
close to you.
help me. Just tell me what they say.
Range Rover, Defender, Discovery.
Okay.
3 different brand names that align with the rationale why we have the 3 different signs out front.
Thank you.
And that's facing,
This is the frontage of the building, facing the
on
street.
the drop-off area side or on the 5 display spaces side? I'm looking.
I'm sorry, what was that question,
I'm
sir?
facing, we're looking at the building, the drop-off area is here, and then the 5 display spaces is on the left. Is that on the right side facing the building?
Yes.
Right.
Is that design element part of the corporate branding guidelines, or is that a franchise decision?
That's the branding for the corporate.
It's corporate decisions, not
Corporate.
decided by the ultimate operator. And Mr. Hunter, notably, what type of sign is not there? What name isn't there?
Land Rover,
Okay, so there will be no signage indicating Land Rover.
correct.
Okay.
Can you talk about the color? Are those in color? I see the plan, the printout, obviously it's a black and white printout. Is that lettering in color? And also the sign, the freestanding signs?
Freestanding signs will be different colors. And we have samples that we'll be sharing shortly. Yeah, and the letters are all white and will be illuminated from behind.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, and maybe this is for Rich. If we do approve the 3 different signs, would that be setting a precedent that, you know, Ford would say, I want one for Mustang and all of their different vehicle types?
I'm surprised it took more than 5 minutes to get to that question. So, you know, it potentially could lead to other car dealers requesting individual signs for their various model types, right? Because this isn't 3 car dealers shop, right? If I were to go there to buy a car, am I dealing with 3 different car dealerships or 1?
That's what I wanted. That's why I wanted to call Mr. Fincy, because he was going to explain. This is, if you don't mind, would it be okay if Mr. Fincy testified to this?
All right, I'm calling a timeout. So, Mr. Silbert,
Yes.
you did your first case here. You've done a lot of cases here. I saw you did a great job with the Chick-fil-A in front of the planning board. You know how this works. You teed off your case, said you'd like to take the signage head-on.
That's okay.
So now I get to say something, okay? I've been on this board for 2014. Mr. Sweeney, Mrs. Amin have been on here a lot longer. The corridor that you see that runs, you know, essentially from the Bridgewater Commons all the way through Greenbrook does have many auto dealers. Each of those auto dealers has 1 sign in front. There's also been particular attention paid by previous zoning boards and planning boards to create an aesthetic along this corridor. And this corridor includes trees. It includes design elements that are conducive to why people moved to Bridgewater in the first place. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to put it on the record that each of those dealers, and I can rattle them off because I drove to them all last night and today. Volkswagen dealer, 1. The Jeep Fullerton has 3 different types on 1 sign. Acura has 1 unlit sign, which I was surprised by. Lexus, 1 sign. Chevrolet, 1 sign. Nissan, 1 sign. Infiniti, 1 sign. Mercedes-Benz, 1 sign. So with that said, I'm not going to kick off tonight an arms race amongst the dealers, because that's what happens. And it started with Chevrolet, came in here, asked for a 100-foot, triple-digit sign, and this board said no. Lexus came in 2 years later, asked for a 65-foot sign, and I think they used the term that the sign we wanted was unavailable. And myself and Mr. Sweeney, we called Lexus, we went on their website, and we found a design package element, lo and behold, that fit our criteria. So a lot of people have been here before you did your first case and have worked very, very hard to protect the aesthetic and the design elements on that corridor. We don't want it to look like Union, Springfield. We want it to look like Bridgewater. So that's all I'm going to say. So you can do your case however you want, but you brought up the sign. I wanted to put it on the record, but it's your case, so please feel free.
Noted. Thank you. And so I'll wait to call Mr. Fincy to address the board's questions about the branding. We can, Mr. Hunter, if you want to just conclude your testimony on the signs. Obviously, we're getting good feedback from the board here, and it is noted. And I just want Mr. Hunter to conclude his testimony. And after he's done, our team will huddle up, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Again, the signage on the building is indicated on the drawing, and we've discussed the 3-sign situation, and the specifics of the proposed is listed as well here. And the materials that these signs would be made of, we have an example that we will share with you at a later, for our second testimony by Mr. Barlows.
Couple questions. The actual lettering, what's the size of the lettering?
The lettering is 3 inches high.
3 inches high.
Correct.
So are you concerned at all that the motorists will be able to see the lettering, or is that not really the intent?
Well, obviously, we want to get the name there so people can see it, but there's not a glare, it's not, something bright of being an eyesore. This blends with the nature of the building, and again, goes back to the different names of the.
I guess what my question is the intent, in your opinion, is the intent for motorists to recognize Land Rover dealerships in the future because they see these 3 signs configured, or is it because they're supposed to read the language or the writing on the sign?
Well, the signage is, of course, the lettering is the most important because we want to see the names. And obviously, the 3 align with the different brand names.
So just looking at the plan, I just want to make sure that I have this right. Then we'll move on. It looks like if the lettering is only 3 inches, it looks like it'd be very difficult for a motorist that's 95 feet driving westbound on Route 22 to see the sign lettering. Any position on that?
I'd agree that, from a distance, it's difficult to read, but you would get the image of the 3 as being the indicator of, the building.
Okay, all right. So,
Do you have any simulations that you could show us that could prove that fact?
I'm sorry, sir?
Any simulations, any photo sims that you could show the board that would represent what this would look like in this situation?
Nothing more than what we have here.
What dealership are they looking for, though? If it's not Land Rover, it doesn't say Land Rover. What is the dealership that they're trying to find?
That's an excellent question, and I would like to defer that question to my next witness, who's going to explain the rebranding from Land Rover. And perhaps it's very misleading for me to continue calling it Land Rover, because there are going to be 3 distinct brands here. I've used that umbrella term, early on in the application process, and learned that they were doing this national rollout with 3 distinct brands. But if I could have our next witness address that question.
While we're there, you keep emphasizing, 3 brands. Once a client or a customer is in the dealership and say they want to finance it, are there 3 separate finance departments?
Good question. I'd defer that again to our next witness. But it's a good question.
Okay.
Mr. Hunter, do you have anything further
I
on
believe
this
I'm
exhibit?
concluded,
Okay.
unless there's any other questions.
It's a great question.
Thank you very much.
Other questions on the board?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm a little confused here, all right? You have 3 signs you want to put out close to 22, correct?
Correct.
How tall are they? 11,
Each one is about 16 foot 3 high.
16 feet? All right, and you're saying how big is the lettering?
The lettering is 3 inches.
3 inch? Why on earth would you put up a 16.5-foot sign with 3-inch lettering? I mean, I wouldn't even be able to see it.
Depends on the distance from the sign. Yes, sir.
But
I mean, 3 inches is this compared to a thing 10 feet taller than I am. I'm being realistic. I mean, at least if you drive past Acura, and I did the Honda, at least you can see where you're going. I wouldn't even be able to see it to turn in.
So most of the signs are going to be empty space.
So why would you need 3 signs to brand yourself when you could probably put 15 different names on 16.5 feet? That's my point.
is it, if I can piggyback off of that question, and perhaps I'm hoping it's a good example, but is it similar to the McDonald's golden arches? You see golden arches, it doesn't have to say McDonald's, you know it's McDonald's. Obviously, this is a totally different business model, but is that possibly what corporate is going for with this?
Yes, it's an image of the 3.
All right, so my question is, do you have a place where you have this set up somewhere else in a different area where we can actually see what it looks like? To me, it looks absolutely ridiculous.
This is the first.
This is the national rollout.
Thanks.
Bridgewater Township has been chosen to, as the municipality in the country, to have this national rollout.
Mr. Silver, you're a smart guy. You understand what an arms race is, right?
do.
In advertising.
I do understand.
So what do you think I'm saying here?
Mr. Chairman, your concern is that you're going to start an arms race with all of the other dealerships that look at this new dealership and they see that they have 3 signs. Where the heck is their 3 signs? Why is this dealership special?
Do you think this would be a similar example if Lexus had a 45-foot sign and you were asking for a 46-foot sign?
I think that would be more reasonable of a request based upon the very minor deviation, where in Bridgewater Township, 1 freestanding sign is permitted, and we're requesting 3.
And
noted.
you're in agreement with my assessment of the aesthetic and, what the different land use boards over the history of Bridgewater Township have tried to achieve in this area?
Mr. Chairman, I am.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And
Mike, follow up again, sorry. So to sort of piggyback on my finance question, when a client walks into the dealership, are there going to be separate salesmen for each of the 3 brands, as you call them? I call them models, but stick with brands.
I don't personally know the answer to that question, so that's why I'd want our operational expert and our representative from Paul Miller to answer that question. It's the next witness I will call.
All right, let's just, any more board questions? Professionals,
I'm
questions?
just going to weigh in a
Yeah.
few things. Can you just provide, I know these are 3 separate freestanding signs, but from the site plan, they appear to be very close together. Can you just provide what the distance between the signs are?
Believe it is 3 feet. They're staggered.
They're staggered, so visually, if it's 3 feet separation, does it look like a 3-foot gap, or does it look like less than 3 feet? Do they look closer
Well, it
together?
depends as you would go travel by it, because obviously they'd be, I'm sorry, I've got my mic in hands, but it would be like this, and then another one back here, so.
So they can almost appear like
Series.
one wall from
At
some
a certain point,
perspective.
it would.
You mentioned that this is the color scheme, the grays and black.
We'll have some samples that mimic the colors.
Okay. As far as the ratio, I think this has come up. You have a ratio of the lettering to the total square footage for each panel? Two percent,
Here we go.
3%?
Here's the samples. I do not have that off the top of
We can calculate it. Give me 1 second.
It's about 1% of lettering to square footage. And I only bring that up in the context of the variance, which will be under the purview of the planner to testify to, but, that's just something to consider for the board. That's about 1% of words to the total sign area. And signage, I understand it has an aesthetic, it has an artistic element to it, it has a branding element to it, but signage is also intended to be a wayfinding, a place-finding sign. It's supposed to be for safety, for motorists. So just keep that in mind, I guess, for the board, really, and for the applicant to consider as if there are any revisions. I know we've been talking about this being kind of a corporate identifier for the new branding. Have you looked at signage on Route 22? Other signage, not necessarily car dealerships, but other signage for freestanding masonry signs, things like that?
I've done some research on that to align with this, but obviously this is 3.
Are there any other signs that are similar in nature? Not necessarily for a car dealership, again. Are there any other signs that are, just kind of a wall, like a larger sign?
I imagine there are. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But again, it's something that as you travel by, it does change its imagery.
There are, I will say that there are signs that I find to be similar. They may have name panels or things like that on it that may look different, but in the dark, they may look very similar to this. And so I also want the applicant to consider of how this sign may appear at different times of day, especially to motorists who are trying to find a place and may, if this is the only identifier without words, how they may perceive the sign, especially when there are signs that are similar in nature that may not be lit like this one. So that's just considerations, I guess, as we're looking through the sign package. And then the final thing is that if this is the first corporate rollout, it's not the first time I've seen a corporate kind of from the top down of how signage packages or aesthetics need to look. But if this is the first one, then it's not really bound by other existing ones. And I think that should be a consideration to be brought back to corporate about the feedback we have here, because hopefully it will be helpful, and I hope they're not set in stone about what the package has to look like in Bridgewater. Thank you.
The only question I have is, will you be providing testimony on the architecture of the building and the exterior lighting, or you have another architect for that?
Absolutely have another architect who's going to be testing.
Not Mr. Hunter?
Correct. Correct. This is just to deal with the signage.
Okay, That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, can I ask just one question of our board professionals? So if they go to a sign, back to their sign company, and they say, listen, make us one sign, put a little angle in it, and make it staggered as it's one sign, and they come back, is it still too big?
If they make it the same size as it is right now, yes.
Combined together, all three
About
together?
250 square feet right now in some. So they're only allowed 100 square feet.
Exactly, okay, I just want to make sure. Personally, I don't really care what your sign looks like, I mean, as long as it conforms to the zoning, but that's basically, that, to me, is a big deal. You know, just saying. You know, it's not just necessarily about the fact that it's three, for me, it's that it's put all three together. You can see in this image, you can see it's a wall. You can see it's a staggered wall. So, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fresco. Members of the public, questions on the signage testimony you've heard? All right, seeing none, back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Fruce, if I can have 1 minute based upon all the feedback that we just received to consult my team, and I would like to call our operational witness, but I just want to consult with the team for 1 moment, if that's okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
In the meantime, why don't we use this to, I had skipped the public portion of our meeting. So, Rich, with your permission, I want to open it up to members of the public that are here tonight that would like to speak on any land use issue that is not on our agenda. And let the record reflect that no one is here to seek the public comment portion, and we're going to close that, and we're going to reopen the case that we just heard. Okay, Rich?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Who's on there?
Right. So, Mr. Chairman and the board, thank you very much for indulging us here. So I would like to call David Fincy, who's a development manager at Paul Miller. He's a representative of the applicant, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
If you could just spell your last name for us.
F is in Frank, I is in India, N is in Nancy, T is in Tom, Z is in zebra, Y is in yellow.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
What is your title with Paul Miller?
Dealer Development Director.
Thank you.
I do all the construction, real estate for the dealership. All right. So just to kind of give a little history. First, I guess, based on what we just did, I'm going to talk a little bit about Land Rover. Obviously, a few years ago, we kind of started to make a deal on getting a dealership in the Somerset County area. And there was a lot of talk about where to have it and all that kind of stuff. And they look into a lot of demographics and things and how luxury brands do in an area and that kind of stuff, and the population and highways and all that stuff. And obviously, between them and us, we decided that Bridgewater was the perfect spot for it. Also being distances away from other Land Rover dealerships, so when people driving, it wouldn't take that long. Obviously, we have a Land Rover dealership up in Parsippany, so it's a 35-minute drive to get to that. So it's a long way to get to any dealerships. And when we started with them, it was a Land Rover dealership, and that's why the application was Land Rover, by the way. Fast forward just in that part, now that they gave us the letter of intent, and we had to look for land, and we're doing all that stuff, Land Rover, which is a company out of the United States, decided to change their name. And not just change their name, where you guys, and I know what you're thinking, it's cars. It's not 3 different models, it's 3 different brands. So to them, it's like putting Toyota, Honda, and Subaru in the same building. That's why they did this whole 3 signage thing. It is new, obviously, the actual image, and that's why it talks about where the initial one hasn't officially been brought out for anybody to do it yet. We would kind of be first on that if we get approvals. They have gotten a lot of dealer feedback on their signage, just so you know. It's not something that everybody, not necessarily about the 3 signage, it's more about what you talked about. It's a big sign, 3-inch letters, it's 95 feet from the road. No one can read it. And they go, that's not what we're going for. It's an image, it's a look. Each sign is a different color, the way it's staggered. It's a luxury brand look, not that you know it's, because someone coming to get a Range Rover, they were coming to get it. It's not like they were driving down the road and they go, Range Rover, and they turn in. So it's kind of more of an image than it is a signage to them. And as dealers, and maybe it's just in the United States, we feel differently, but in the end, we're a franchise, kind of like McDonald's. We don't get to say we want different arches scenario. So that's kind of been our problem, and just so you know, we have argued against it, because we're thinking it's advertising to have your name up there, and nobody could read it. You know, making it so small. So that's where all of that came from, just so you know. Just to give some overview on that. So it is 3 different brands, not 3 different models. Like we,
So, are these vehicles, are they manufactured in the same facility?
well, they have more than one plant, but yes, a couple of them are.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I get it. It's them. Well, again, we're a franchise, not a manufacturer, so we're bound by certain things. I do appreciate all the feedback, because it's not feedback I didn't expect, and we haven't ourselves brought up as an issue. So it's one that's understood, but they're more on, it's an image and a look more than it's a sign.
Excuse me, I get the impression from your comments and the way you're delivering them that you do not agree with what they're proposing to do. And it sounds as though many of the U.S. dealers may agree with that.
Well, I can't speak for other dealers.
Okay,
I
just
can only
yourself.
speak for ourselves. Yes, I would.
Hang on, I'm not
I
done.
like what they have.
Hang on a minute,
Oh,
hang on
yeah.
a minute. Is that true? Do you agree that this is a good move for, I don't even know what to call them, Paul Miller, Land Rover, Defender, da-da-da-do-da-da, you know? That they should be doing this? What's your opinion?
My personal opinion is.
No, your opinion as the dealer
Yeah,
development
my
manager.
opinion is, for those of you that go out and look at these cars, Range Rover is its own standard. No one calls it a Land Rover Range Rover. It's a Range Rover, right? No one ever uses it. It's not like it's a Toyota 4Runner, or it's where you put the name in front of it. That brand unto its own does kind of have its own image.
At least it
I
used to.
So I understand why they're doing that, why they are separating it out, because of the panache and all that stuff of that image. So I agree with that. The only thing I personally, and it's personal, it's not necessarily a Paul Miller, is that 3-inch lettering on a sign that you know you can't read. It doesn't make sense to me either. But it's not something I get to change. We could argue it, but if in the end they say, you want the dealership, this is what, it's 3-inch lettering or nothing else.
What
I have
happens
to do 3-inch lettering.
that we don't want 3 giant signs?
That puts us in a different position. If obviously if a town came and said, you can't have it,
Well, right now, that's what the regs say.
I get to go to them and go, it's not our decision. Now you know that.
Were you in the room when I spoke to Mr. Silbert a few minutes ago? No, seriously, were you in the room?
Yes, I was. Yeah, no, I was.
Did you hear what I said?
I did hear what you
How
said.
many other dealers have more than one sign designating their brand in front of their dealership in Bridgewater Township?
None that I know of in Bridgewater.
Okay.
I know in other towns. I don't know of one in Bridgewater. Like our BMW store has more than one sign out front.
In Bridgewater?
What?
In Bridgewater?
In Wayne. No, I'm saying in other towns we have it.
So you heard what I said.
Yeah, in Bridgewater, I don't know of one.
I don't work for any other zoning boards in other towns.
Yeah.
I work for the
I apologize.
township I work for the people of Bridgewater Township. So you heard what I said.
I heard what you said. And please, no disrespect. I did nothing that you said. I said we won't allow. If you say you won't allow it, I could hear that. I know you were trying to say. Do you understand what I mean?
Mr. Fincy, if I could just ask a question. We've heard a lot of feedback already on the signage component of this application. Can you commit to going back to speaking to Land Rover about the signage now that we've heard the feedback from the township?
Yes. If the Based on the feedback being no, absolutely.
Because
No, there's been no vote. There's been no decision.
like,
feedback.
I said the
I happen to
feedback. I
have
didn't
an
say the vote.
opinion as one voting member, and I put on the record the fact of there's only one sign in front of each dealer designating what brand they represent. Now, I do know in Somerville, the Jeep dealer, I just looked it up on Google Maps, they happen to have one sign that represents 4 of their brands.
Right.
But that's not Bridgewater, that's Somerville. But they found a way to do it.
And I said, as I said, I hear your feedback, and based on the feedback sounding like the answer is no, I will go talk to that. Yes, we will have to have that.
If Mr. Silbert would like us to vote, I can call for a motion and,
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay.
No.
We've heard the board's feedback, and we're going to do what we can on our end to change the sign plan. But thank you very much for letting us present the sign plan. We have a lot more of the application to present this evening, and I can say 100% definitively, we hear the board's feedback. We understand the board's feedback,
It's not feedback.
or the facts that the board is pointing out.
Thank you.
Understood.
Yes.
It's not feedback, it's facts.
Yes.
Surrounding area in Bridgewater.
There's no opinion put on the record regarding your signs. I just wanted you to understand that every other dealer has one sign designating their brand that they represent. No opinion.
Noted. And Mr. Fincy, I think we should move on.
Okay. So obviously, we were awarded the franchise with a letter of intent based on us finding property. Just so you know, I've worked with a lot of properties to try and find it, and obviously, you only have one zone that allows car dealerships, which is a little area on Route 202. I did speak to M&M Realty multiple times and negotiated with them multiple times and sat with them multiple times. But having already had their approvals for a warehouse, they were unwilling to.
That would be a manufacturing facility.
Yes, I know. He calls it a warehouse.
Just more facts for you, because it's not a warehouse. It's a manufacturing.
I apologize. I don't know what it was. He just says warehouse.
I want to correct the
Yeah. I even went to the couple of office buildings just north of them. One would not sell. The other one would consider selling, but had leases till 29 and 30, which our letter of intent will expire, and therefore we wouldn't have the franchise at that point anymore. So obviously I couldn't do them either. So we did make efforts there. I made lots of efforts up and down Route 22. I spoke to Centerpoint. I spoke to that property next to Mercedes on both sides of Mercedes, which was the Holiday Inn at one point, and then across the little street on the other side that I think also was doing either manufacturing or warehousing. I spoke to the motel, but they have that shared entrance and stuff, which is a problem for a dealership. And the guy with Red Lobster wouldn't give up, and then, of course, Red Lobster went out of business. I spoke with Safavia. I've been up and down the strip talking to a lot of different people trying to find the right property. This property was not actually for sale. I just ended up calling the dealer and saying, what are you doing with that property next, that other piece? And he was like, well, eventually I might just use it for parking. Would you want to sell it instead? So that's really how this property came about.
Own it? You own it, or you have a letter of intent?
We own it. So that's how this property came about. The other interesting fact about this property, just give you a little bit of history, I'm Paul Miller. So Paul Miller's father was the president of Gannett Newspapers, which owned the Courier News. And from 1974 to 1977, Paul Miller himself was in that building as the publisher before he went into the car business in 1978. So it's kind of a full circle moment. Buying back the property he actually worked at when he was a young man in his 20s as a publisher. So kind of funny how that turned out, that after all the property I looked at, I ended up coming with that. And I did not know that when I came to him with the property. And he was like, you're not going to believe this. So kind of an interesting footnote there. I guess moving on to operations, and I'll get to hours and do that stuff, but I just want to answer, I know you had some questions. Everybody in the store deals with all 3 brands. There'll be one business manager. There'll be, 3 salespeople, 1 sales manager, 1 general manager, 1 service department. So for everything. So It doesn't break up internally, other than internally in the showroom, there's 3 sections, each designated with the name in that section and stuff, and their car's only in that section.
So separate salespeople for each car?
No.
No.
Everything's is one inside, except that, like I said, the showroom will be like when you walk in, you'll see a sign over here with a wall that says Range Rover, and that's where the Range Rover stuff is. And then there'll be a Defender section and a Discovery section, according to their current image plans that they've given me, which, by the way, is confidential, but I know this is a public meeting, and I told them there's nothing I could do about it. It's going to get out there. I can't change the fact that I have to talk about it.
Thank you.
So is it gonna have 3, but is it gonna be Paul Miller Defender, Paul Miller Range Rover?
Yeah, they don't let us use the name Paul Miller in
So it's gonna have
branding.
3 different address,
It's just Range Rover, Defender, and Discovery.
so you're going, where are you going? I'm going to the Range Rover store or the Defender store?
That's what they think is how they're doing the branding, yes.
3 addresses.
And yes, like I said, we are,
Is that true? You could have 3 addresses?
No,
it's one address.
it's like 3 destinations. But
One address, and I don't know if it matters, but obviously we were given an address of 1207, which we didn't initially have, so.
And Paul Miller owns numerous dealerships.
Yeah, so I was going to go there. So Paul Miller, we currently own 11 dealers, brands in dealerships. So we have a bunch of Highlines, so, I mean, I can go through, we're Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Porsche, Land Rover, BMW, Audi.
Do any of those premium brands have 3 monstrous signs?
BMW actually has 2 monstrous signs. We got like a 60-something foot sign, and we got another 20-something foot sign.
Not in Bridgewater.
Right, not in Bridgewater.
Gotcha.
Right.
Oh.
You're welcome.
So with the 3 signs, or the 3 different brands,
Yes.
could you open up a dealership with just one of the brands, or is it all or nothing?
Well, when I say all or none, so many of you might know, there's currently Land Rover, Jaguar is a combined in dealerships. We're not bringing Jaguar. So we said we're not doing that brand.
Okay, so excluding Jaguar, if you wanted to sell
others,
one
yeah,
of these
make it 3.
brands, you have to have all 3.
You have to have all 3.
Okay, so the identity would never be sort of an individual
Correct.
brand on any of these properties.
I think they pair well together, so they want to keep it together, because obviously, again, building a dealership for just Discovery might not make financial sense with how much it costs to build the buildings for just the one of them. So that's kind of how you pair. That's
never
why you see,
would
like,
just-
Chrysler does that with Jeep and other brands, because, just to put Chrysler on its own or Dodge on its own, they can't make it on their own. They need the other brand to support the building.
Would they ever stand alone? They're always all going to be together.
They're all what?
They're always all going to be together. There's not going to
The
just
3 of them, yeah. It's 4 of them, but we're not taking the 4th.
It's always going to be
Jaguars.
the Land Rover cars in the same.
Yeah, it won't just be Range Rover.
And Jaguar just rebranded as well. I know that.
We're not doing Jaguar.
I'm not sure they sell cars anymore.
We will not have Jaguar there.
But the Defender et al. Company is part of Jaguar, and Jaguar also rebranded, correct? Within the last 2 months?
No, so Land Rover has these 3 that we're talking about currently.
Right.
Land Rover bought Jaguar. So they always stayed as 2 separate brands, but they're both under the umbrella
I
of
think that's
Tata Motors.
important, and Mr. Silber can probably address this as you're his client, is that land use approvals run with the site. We don't care about what happens with the brands and the rebranding and the companies and the corporate ownership. Ultimately, if you get approval for 3 signs, those 3 signs can run forever. So again, that's why we take this so seriously. We're not trying to create a problem for you from a marketing or a cash flow perspective, but ultimately that the land use approvals, and again, Mr. Silber can advise you further, that they run with the property. So that's why there's such a pushback against 3 signs when every other dealership in Bridgewater has 1.
I understand.
So you know that where we're coming from.
Yep.
Okay.
I understand, yep.
Mr. Fincy, we've spoken a lot about branding, so there are a lot of things that are routine or normal about this dealership. Let's talk about things that are consistent with this dealership, with other dealerships in Bridgewater. Can you talk a little bit about the number of employees, hours of operation, get into that.
Sure, so you're talking about, 24 employees when we open. If things go really well, it could go up over years to another 4 to 8 employees maybe, kind of thing over time, where most of that would be like another salesperson and maybe a couple more mechanics and an ancillary, and a service writer or something like that. So it's not a lot more people, based on the size that it's projected to be.
And if you have 26 employees or 30 employees in that range, are they all working on the same day?
No, and so you're talking on any given day, probably 2 to 6 off, because there's more off on a Saturday. So any given day, you're going to have 2 to 6 people that are not there. So initially, when there's 24, probably on the biggest day, on a Monday, there might be 22 people working, and on a Saturday, there might be 18 working.
And we haven't gotten into the actual site plan layout, but will there be designated employee parking on the property?
Yes, there will.
Okay. And then, since you kind of spoke about this a little bit when you were speaking about the number of employees expected, let's talk about the hours of operation, if you can.
So Monday through Thursday, it's 7:30 to 8 p.m. Friday, 7:30 to 6, and Saturday, 7:30 to 5 or 5:30. We haven't really decided, so it's going to be somewhere in that range.
Okay.
And Sunday, we're closed.
Overnight storage of vehicles. Speak to that a little bit. What do you anticipate? New car inventory, vehicles that you're servicing, used car?
Yeah, so obviously, we're going to try and keep, when you look at the plan, the new car inventory in the back for safety reasons. Unfortunately, Land Rovers are a highly sought-after and stolen vehicle. So they're going to be in the back. I mean, we're talking about having probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 maybe in stock. In general, obviously there are times, COVID, when it's a lot less, and there could be times where it can go up a little bit too, but
30 to 50 of each brand or total?
total of all of them. So,
Are you going to have used cars also, selling them?
and then there's going to be used cars, which we have out kind of on the side. With it,
Expect on that number.
that number, you're probably talking about somewhere near 30.
You're talking approximately 60 cars, new and used, there most of the time.
Yeah. And yeah, and I'll leave it out because it's not a lot in the showroom. You're only going to be talking about 3 or 4 cars in the showroom. Obviously, then there'll be obviously service cars that are left, that can't be fixed same day kind of scenario, or someone drops off and can't pick it up doesn't come back for 3 days.
Have loaners.
We will have loaners for people. So, you're talking on the service side, probably another 40 to 50 cars with the loaners and people's cars being on the lot.
In terms of the parking, you're going to have handicap parking?
Yes.
And electric charging stations?
Yes, both, correct.
Thank you.
And Mr. Fincy, can you just talk about deliveries? Because we spoke about that yesterday, different types. Describe common deliveries to the property, whether it be new vehicles or...
Yeah, so you'll get new vehicle deliveries. Obviously, with what you're hearing, I'm saying in a month, it's probably maybe 2 to 3 a week at maximum, and they will be dropped off on the lot. We've made it so that they can drive in, unload, and then drive back out. And I'm sure someone will attest to that part.
Yeah, we'll have her here speak to that.
That's really our biggest vehicle. There's a parts delivery, which isn't as big anywhere near as a car carrier.
What type?
More
is
of a
that,
box truck kind of thing, a 48-foot kind of, or smaller. Those deliveries are actually in the middle of the night when we're closed, when no one's there. They just come, they have access to get into parts, drop off their cages, and leave.
Are they part of your group then, the delivery people?
What's that again?
People that come and deliver at night can get in and access. Are they part?
Yes, they have their own access. They just stop, unload, and leave.
Are they part of your group or?
No, that's from, the manufacturer hires a company to deliver parts. Like any car dealership, it's the same for that. Outside of that, obviously, you can have some tow trucks. If a car had to be towed in. You're going to have UPS, you know, Amazon, those kind of trucks come by and deliver stuff. And you're going to have an oil truck for the bulk oil to change the oil in the cars.
Security at night?
No, so that gets into a little bit of the lighting, and we have some fencing in the back to protect the, some gating.
Security personnel.
No security personnel at this time.
Other than the signs, the branding thing, is there anything else in the application that's about branding that you can tell us about? Inside, outside,
That's what I said, the inside is just, the showroom will be in like 3 sections. There's a Range Rover section, there's a Defender section, and there's a Discovery section. That's the only thing like inside that's gonna make it different.
So the only branding thing is really those,
There's a signage and and that brand, because each of those sections will have a branding of a sign inside also that says Range Rover and stuff, yes.
thank you.
Just a few other operational questions. Based upon the size of this store or this dealership, what's a good day? What type of traffic would you expect to the site? How many customers are coming in? Are they predominantly service customers? Are they in the business of buying a new car? What do you see?
You're going to get more service customers than you are sales customers. You're probably talking on any given day, you know, on a weekday, probably sales-wise, 5 customers. On a weekend, 8 to 10 on sales. Service, you're probably talking about 5 to 10 a day on any given day.
I think that covers the operational questions I had, Mr. Pensy.
You said 5 to 10 service calls a day?
Yeah.
How many bays are you gonna have in the building? I don't have the plan.
It's 10 bays right now.
Thank you.
So what it works, the way Land Rover works, I mean, I wish to say something better, but the way Land Rover, you end up getting a car, it goes up on the lift, you find out what's wrong, you got to order the parts. It stays on your lift. You do a different car on a different lift, and it's stuck on that lift till when the parts come in.
You don't have a parts
So
department?
although you have 10 lifts, it's not like it equates to 10 technicians.
All right. Are you planning on having a parts department?
We do, but there's a lot of parts to have for a Range Rover and the different, because within Range Rover, there's models of Range Rover, so there's 5, 6 different models.
Are there like customary parts that you would have there?
Yeah, this customer, obviously, when you're changing your oil and regular maintenance parts, you have, but when some wiring or some, you know, things that break the car down, you might not necessarily have that stuff in stock.
Mr. Silbert, this is the only witness you have from the Paul Miller Group itself, correct?
Correct.
All right. So I'd like to ask a few questions on your Volkswagen dealership, which is about a quarter mile west. Are you
That's not
familiar?
our Volkswagen dealership.
Not ours.
That's not yours? No. Oh,
That's open road.
okay. The concern that was expressed to me by a councilman, they thought it was your dealership, but apparently it's not, is that when their cars get offloaded, that it blocks the fire lanes. So they asked me to ask you for a stipulation that under no circumstances, whether used, new, or any cars that are delivered, that you would not block any fire lanes, and put that in the resolution, if that was okay, if you were to be approved.
Yes.
Great.
Stipulated.
Thank you.
And just as an aside, I don't, you know, looking at the design, I know, you know, people don't necessarily like car dealerships because of all the cars that we stack in the front of a dealership. And I took pains to change this dealership and convince Paul Miller and Lara to clear out the front and not have that whole front of cars. I mean, I passed that Volkswagen store where they go down the whole drive out to the highway.
That's stopped.
Which looks terrible.
I think our zoning officer has stopped it, and I think
Yeah.
they could stop you if you guys.
But
just
we
wanted
took
get
pains
that.
to get rid of that, because that is what the car dealership is, because you want people to see what you're selling, not put it in the back, and I'm putting it in the back,
Okay.
and trying to make it a much more pleasant front.
So there'll never be any cars out front?
There are some, like, I'll have to show the thing, there are some, like the demos, like you'd come and you'd want to drive a car, and there's like 5 cars of those,
Right.
and a couple on display right outside the glass of the showroom, like on the patio, I'll call it. but nothing out in like the front line kind of scenario.
And nothing that'll ever block a fire lane.
And nothing will block fire.
Gotcha. Very good.
Yeah, no,
While
we're,
you're still up and talking, I just have a general business curiosity question also.
Sure.
You're having 3 brands of cars there. We did discover whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you said new car inventory would run between 30 and 40.
yeah, 30 and 50.
So that 30 and 50, that's not considered a high level of inventory for 3 different brands, much less one. So do the majority of people buy the new car off the lot, or do they order one?
Currently, I would say at our current Land Rover store, we're probably doing about 35 to 40%. It's not on our ground.
Okay, so they order that, so that justifies having a
Right,
lower.
or it's an inbound or that kind of thing. yeah.
6 or 8 weeks.
And
before.
just to get into like what they figure our planning volume is, they figure it's 30 cars a month, new,
Selling 30 cars?
in this market. So 30 to 50 cars even in
Is that
stock is
new and
more than you
used or
sell in a
just
month.
new? Is that new and used or just
Just new.
new? Okay, thank you.
Other board questions? Board professionals?
Thank you. I have a few. Some of the estimations you've given, are they based on your current operations at your other location?
Estimates on, not the planning
number-
volume.
This number of service customers a day?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
they're based on our Parsippany location.
And it's a similar size to
It's
this?
much bigger.
Bigger than this one, okay.
Yes, much bigger.
Okay.
Yeah, it has 36 bays.
You kind of heard a little bit about some of the car dealerships and overflow of inventory and the site conditions as a result. You mentioned, a total of about anywhere from 60 to 80 new and used cars on the lot, and then additionally like service customers, loaner cars, all that stuff. There's 145 spaces right now dedicated just to new and used storage plus display. So that's another, 65 spaces than what you're saying is, estimated. What are those extra 65 spaces there?
Well, obviously, everything I base is on what we think it is today. And like any business, obviously, we hope to grow over time. I could tell you every one of my dealerships, which have been there a long time, don't have enough parking. Because if you keep growing, so my current Land Rover dealership, as an example, started at I was there in the 90s at it. We were selling 15 cars maybe a month. Now it sells 100. So different market, amount of people in the area, but we always want to prepare for more. Plus, I want to prepare more, even if service grew, but again, we can't know how many are going to come from service. It's not everybody that buys is going to come. There are many people in this market that have to travel a long way for service. So if the service becomes bigger, I might need more service spaces, a little bit more. And we just want to be able to have the flexibility that we didn't lock ourselves in, and now we have too many cars, and now where do we throw them? And we got to go on the grass, and we got to go, which we don't want to do. We want to look professional through and through
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, there's a limitation on that, certainly, that the cars will have to be parked in paved parking spaces. But I was just curious about the volume. So the estimates you gave about inventory, that's kind of your estimates based off of conservatively starting the business.
Correct. The planning volume, I think we could do right off the bat.
Okay. As far as the storage of vehicles, and I just wanted to make this clear on the record, there won't be storage of vehicles from inventory from other dealerships on the site. It's going to be strictly for the business that's being conducted here, correct?
Yes.
As far as the used cars, are those only Range Rover Defender Discovery brand used cars, or are there other used brands within there?
Obviously, we will take trades of other brands there, so there will be, but if you were to go on the lot, in general, probably at least 70 to 80% is normally, I can't say exactly because it varies based on trades, but is normally your own brand when I look at my other Highline stores.
Okay. I think that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Just a couple questions. you had testified hours of operation starting every day, 7:30 a.m. Is that just for service?
Service.
Service only. When does
Sales
sales
won't
start?
open till 9.
9? Okay.
And sales will be open till 8, and service will probably close, depends on business, anywhere from 6 to 7.
So,
So
So
I was
then-
going because it's one store.
so you said Monday through Thursday, 7:30 to 8. That's total hours
Total hours.
between service and sales.
And sales, right.
So then Friday and Saturday, sales would go beyond 6 or 5:30.
No,
So sales on Friday
sales
and
closes
Saturday.
early, we close early on those
Okay.
nights. Yep.
All right. So 8 o'clock is the latest. How do you handle extinguishing or lowering your lights at your other dealerships in the off, the close times?
So honestly, at our other dealerships currently, we don't actually have a system that lowers lights. We've had a ongoing problem and are actually working with towns to fence in properties because of the ongoing theft problem at my Highline stores.
Okay. Is it something you would consider looking into?
I'm not consider looking into it. We definitely need enough light to deter and for cameras to see people to be able to call the police, because unfortunately, people will be coming on the lot and attempt to take cars. I wish that wasn't the case, but, we do everything we can. We even let police actually station on our lot at Land Rover in Parsippany, and cars, we've had people run in with a gun into the shop and hold our people up and steal a car. It's just,
Is that a frequent occurrence?
no, the gun thing only occurred once in the last 10 years, but
Okay.
theft of cars occurs, they don't always get the car because of all the cameras we have, but theft of cars occurs there a few times a year, or the attempts, unfortunately. I think here, we're at a different demographic and market, and it'll be a little bit different. And then right there, as soon as you leave the lot, you get in the left lane and you get on the highway. It's a tenth of a mile, the on-ramp. So it's a quick, you're going 80 miles an hour.
You researched the Bridgewater Police Department response time?
Have not. We've done a much better job now in how we position our cameras and all that. So when I do this store versus an old store, right, I'm going to have cameras out on the light poles. Right now, everything's on the building because there's no wiring out there on our lots. Now I get to actually position it, like we just built a Porsche service center. I have cameras everywhere. We have not had a single incident yet of a car getting taken.
Who's monitoring the cameras?
Say that again?
I don't want him to divulge his operation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
On our
fair
record.
enough.
So it's not critical to land use.
Yeah.
I don't want to cause any crime at your other deal.
Yeah. Like I said, right now, the way we could set up cameras, we could do a much better.
That's your business. That's your business. Mr. Burr.
We just need some lighting, obviously.
You need lighting, but you'd be willing to look into ways of lowering lighting when the business
Yes.
is closed? That's fair?
Yes, if need be, yes.
Okay. I want to revisit the deliveries, just because I didn't pick up on it. You said your most frequent delivery is for parts?
That's once a
How often?
night.
Once a night, you get a
5
parts
days a
delivery?
week. Currently 5 days. Yeah, I'll say 6 because they only currently do it 5, but obviously some of our other manufacturers do 6. Land Rover happens to only do 5, but they could always change, so I don't want to. I'll say 6 just to be safe.
And what about the new vehicle delivery? How often were those?
Well, again, with the number of cars we're getting, that's probably a 2 to 3 times a week.
2 to 3 a week?
We're only getting 30 cars in a month.
Yep.
They don't normally come just bring you one car. It's kind of expensive, so you bring a few cars each time.
And how do you envision with the current layout, the drop-off of new vehicles taking place?
They're gonna, again, I think someone else is gonna speak
We
to
can,
that?
can we have our engineer testify to that?
That's fine. I think we heard the chairman certainly raise a concern about vehicles being parked in fire lanes. Don't want any unloading, can't have any unloading on Route 22, so we want to make
Definitely
sure
no,
that
yeah.
that'll be a condition, I'm sure, if this is approved, but I just wanted to hear how.
Yeah, definitely no
on-site
unloading on
it's
Route
gonna be
22.
managed. Okay. Back to the security issue, you mentioned there's a fence that's going to be placed around just the new car inventory?
Yeah, for the back area of
Around the rear of the building?
rear of the building.
Chain link fence? Is that
Chain link.
chain link? Do you know
Yeah,
how?
chain link, but probably with the slats.
Okay, so you can't see through it.
You can't see through.
But
So
it'll,
if it's, let's say it's a black fence, it'll have the black slats
it would largely be hidden behind the building, is that fair?
behind the building. Yeah, I think it's on the plan. I think it comes off the back corner and then comes off.
We can certainly touch on the fence
Perfect.
momentarily.
Perfect. I notice on the plan, and I recall from the prior Honda approval, that there's a cross-access easement on your westerly property line, the Honda's easterly property line. There's not going to be any business overlap. There's going to be no need for vehicles to traverse via
Again,
that
we're
easement.
separate company, like it's a separate ownership,
Okay.
no affiliation.
And you mentioned that there may be tow trucks bringing, I guess, broken down vehicles to the site on occasion, but not vehicles, am I correct, that have been in an accident? You're not doing
We don't do body work there.
body work there. So if they
Someone
were in
might,
an accident,
again, we can't stop a tow truck showing up with a car that was in a fender bender,
okay,
but we don't do body work there. We might take it and tow it to a body shop
okay.
if the customer wants. Like,
And
we own a body shop, but
And if that happened, would the vehicle be stored behind the building on the rare occasion that you may have a?
yeah, but it wouldn't stay, again.
It's gonna be quick
It's gonna be
in and
quick to
out.
go away, because
Okay.
we can't really do anything with it. So to keep it there, you gotta get to the body shop so they can call the guy's insurance and get the ball rolling. If it just sits on our lot, nothing's happening.
Okay. Only other question I had is, this is probably out of style now, but do you guys don't use any overhead speakers or trying to get, salesmen into the parking lot?
So the
or
only
anything?
speaker,
That's out
yeah,
of-
nothing in that. The only speaker we have is with the security system.
Okay,
So when they see someone on the lot, the first thing they do is go, "You are being watched. If you stay on the lot, the police will be called." That's not their exact wordage, but
That's
it's
after-
one of those things
that's
just
after hours,
after hours.
typically?
Right, like if someone comes to look and is looking at cars on a Sunday, I'm sure everybody here has been to a car dealership and you've done that before. They're not telling you, get off the lot,
Right.
but they're watching you just to make sure you're not
And that's back to.
trying to break
Mr.
into a car.
Bongiorno's question is, you guys are remotely monitoring the site at all times?
It is,
security-wise?
we have a company that will remotely monitor, and again, it's all censored, so once you draw through
Yeah,
a
don't put it
line.
on the record, because
Yeah.
weird things happen, and, yeah, let's just leave it at
Yeah.
that.
Very good. That's all I had.
All right, thank you, Bill, very much. Members of the public, questions on the dealership development testimony you've heard? All right, seeing none, we're going to take a quick break before your next witness. We're going to take 10 minutes. It's 8:30 now, let's call it 8:40, we'll be back. Thank you. Might have more fun without it.
I can see the side of the room.
All right, we're going to come back in session. The time is 8:41. And Kevin, could you call a quick roll call, please?
Chairman Foose,
Here.
Mr. Wadley,
I hear.
Mrs. Amin. Yep. Mr. Sweeney,
Here.
Mr. Fresco,
Here.
Mr. Bongiorno,
Here.
Mr. Gajewski,
Here.
Mr. Seacat,
Here.
Mr. Vesio,
Here.
Mr. Gabbard.
Here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Silbert.
Chairman, so if I may, I'd like to call our next witness, our professional engineer, Mark Walker. And Mr. Walker, if you can, I'll give you the microphone here. Just please put your educational background and credentials on the record.
Sure. My name is Mark Walker. I hold a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Northeastern University and a master's degree in environmental engineering from NJIT. Been licensed to practice engineering in the state of New Jersey for 33 years. I don't know how that happened. And I'm a principal at the Dykstra Walker Design Group. I've testified in front of boards across New Jersey, planning boards and boards of adjustment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Walker. We accept you as a professional engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Walker, did you prepare or supervise the site plan that's before the board this evening?
I have, yes. We actually did the survey work, the wetland delineation, and the flood hazard area verification.
Excellent. So why don't you walk the board through what we're proposing this evening from a site plan perspective?
Okay, so before we get to that, we handed out an exhibit package. There's 3 exhibits in the package. The first exhibit, A1, was already introduced by another witness. Let me just quickly explain to the board what that is. That's a colorized rendering of our site plan that's superimposed on an aerial photograph, and it's entitled Proposed Layout Exhibit with today's date.
Sheet 3 in the packet.
Sheet 3 in the packet. And then the next exhibit that I want to introduce is entitled Existing Conditions Exhibit. We've referenced that as A3 with today's date. Again, it's a colorized exhibit superimposed on an aerial photograph. And then Exhibit A4 with today's date is entitled Overall Area Exhibit. This is a photograph with our site colorized. It's intended to show what the generalized setbacks are on the Route 22 corridor adjacent to our subject property. So starting off, I'd like to start with Exhibit A3, which is the Existing Conditions Exhibit. Okay, so looking at this exhibit, the existing property is known as Block 559, Lot 5.02. It's Route 22 westbound. It's located on the north side of Route 22, backing up to 287. The property complies with a 5-acre lot area requirement in the GC zone. However, it's rectangular in shape with a very shallow depth. Since the property is west of the Somerville traffic circle, the front yard setback requirement is actually 200 feet in this area. The rear yard setback is 75 feet. Once you apply the 200-foot front yard setback and the 75-foot rear yard setback, you see that our actual building envelope is very shallow. You can see that on Exhibit A3, very long, narrow building envelope. And this condition is really setting the site up for some variances just based on the existing conditions and the setback requirements. The site was, as mentioned, was previously developed as the Gannett Courier News Building. and there was a large building with associated parking. The site was subject to a minor subdivision. The improvements were removed. The lot that was developed is an adjacent lot, which now houses the Honda dealership, which is to our west. All previous improvements have been removed on a small section, except for a small section of gravel parking that exists that's adjacent to the Honda dealership, which we show on Exhibit A3 in the top left corner. The property is essentially, after the improvements have been removed, is essentially an open field with very minimal trees and scrub brush in the area where the previous development took place, with the exception of the Cuckles Brook, which is located to the east of the site. We have some wooded area located adjacent to the brook. And then you can see, based on the exhibit, that we have the brook is actually piped across 287, discharged onto the subject property, and then picked up again by another pipe, and then discharged further to the south within the Cuckles Brook area, which meanders its way down to Route 22. The property does have a little bit of slope to it, and it basically slopes from that gravel parking lot, and it slopes to the east to Cuckles Brook and to the south towards 22. Only a small section of the property has regulated slopes. That area is located adjacent to the Cuckles Brook and is not proposed to be disturbed. Approximately only 10% of the property has slopes that are greater than 10%. No disturbance of slopes greater than 30% are proposed. Cuckles Brook is approximately 14 feet lower than the proposed development area. The brook has a riparian buffer, and we've established a flood hazard area associated with the brook as well. Within the exhibit A3, there's some colorized areas. The yellow area represents the riparian buffer, and the blue area represents the actual flood hazard area that we have defined. And you can see that on this particular exhibit. There's a red area that's located in the northeasterly side of the corner of the property, adjacent to 287. There's a small pocket of wetlands located in that area, and we're showing the wetland area as well as a 50-foot wetland buffer. Also, the open waters that are associated with Cuckles Brook, we are anticipating a 50-foot riparian buffer for that particular area. Let's see. So as you can see by this exhibit, there's really only a small portion of the site that's impacted by those environmental constraints from the brook, which has the stream, and also some wetland areas. We do also have some easements that run along the property that are also a constraint to the subject property. Along the northerly property line adjacent to 287, we have a 30-foot sanitary sewer easement, and then running along the easterly property line, the 30-foot easement also runs on that easterly property line. There's also a 15-foot Somerville Water Company easement and a 20-foot drainage easement. And the majority of those easements, as you can see, especially on the southerly end of the property, are located within those environmentally constrained areas. As we mentioned, the property is located in the GC, General Commercial Zone District, where car sales and service is not a permitted use. Let me move on to Exhibit A4. Exhibit A4 is the overall area exhibit, which is the second one in your packet. And again, the purpose of presenting Exhibit A4 was to give the board a sense of what the neighborhood looks like. And our planner probably has some other exhibits as well that he'll be presenting relative to this. The purpose of this, for me, is to establish what the parking setbacks are and what the building setbacks are within the site. So if we wanted to start from the left side, going to the right side, we've got Lot 3, which is an Atlantic Health building. The parking area is 48 feet and the building's 97 feet. And these dimensions are all measured from the right-of-way, Route 22. And then further to the south on the same lot, there's more parking that's 51 feet. Moving on to the adjacent Honda dealership, the parking is 55 feet, the building's 95 feet. And then further south, there's a larger parking lot within that same property is 96 feet. And as you can see, the subject property, we have parking on the westerly side is 50.5 feet, the building's 100.5 feet, and then additional parking on the south side, which is 80.8 feet. Continuing to the right on the exhibit, there's a furniture store on Lot 6. The building's 95 feet, and the parking is 110 feet. Moving on to the Acura dealership, the building is 100 feet, and the parking is 28 feet. And then one further down, there's a restaurant, Lot 2, which is 57 feet for parking and 15 feet for parking, and the building is 118 feet. So just going through that exercise, I think it's safe to say that what we have proposed for the parking setbacks and the building setbacks fit in with what's going on in the neighborhood. I think one other thing that you can gain from looking at this exhibit is the depth of the property. If you look at the depth of the lots on the right side and you go to the left side, you can see how the lots get narrower and narrower and narrower as they get into the subject property.
Can I ask you one quick question? Because you were speaking to the setbacks, and I think this is an excellent exhibit. You testified that the property is west of Somerville Circle. Isn't it east of Somerville Circle? Which is okay, but I'm going to get there.
Yes.
Okay. So
Sorry.
the property is east of Somerville Circle. I just bring that up because perhaps either our planner or Ms. Armad can chime in as to her interpretation of section 126-171.1. I wasn't sure, which is why my notice reflected a possible variance. I wasn't sure based upon the way that ordinance was written, whether the setback was 200 feet or 100 feet because of that language in there that says west of Somerville Circle. And I was particularly confused by that ordinance based upon the context of the surrounding area, which Mr. Walker just walked the board through. So just wanted to clarify.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We also just took a look at a little further beyond the limit of this exhibit, and we've noticed there are 11 car dealerships along this stretch of highway. Also, with respect to the site and the utilities, there's a water, sewer, gas, and electric utilities that will serve the site. Taking a look at Exhibit A1, which is the proposed conditions. The proposed layout. So as you can see, on the south side, we have Cuckles Brook. We have a large green area that we're preserving. The gray area is the building, parking, is the driveway and parking. The orange area is the proposed building. And then we have some proposed landscaped areas shown. The proposal is to construct a two-story Land Rover dealership with a 24,831 square foot building footprint. There's a one-way in and one way out from Route 22. Route 22 is a three-lane highway in this particular stretch. The building will contain new and used car sales, 11 service bays, an enclosed drop-off and pickup area, a car wash, and 3 detail bays. We have 5 display spaces which are proposed on the westerly side at the front of the building. And then we have a drop-off and pick-up area on the, actually on the north side, on the south side of the building. We have 76 customer and employee parking spaces, which includes our EV bonus parking spaces. There are 164 used, new, and service parking spaces as well. We have proposed 3 ADA parking spaces, 2 EV spaces, and 2 EV make-ready parking spaces. 63 spaces based on auto service, bays, and office, because the ordinance doesn't have a specific designation for car dealerships. So we use those designations to calculate the number of parking spaces required for the dealership.
Just a quick point on that as well. We used very conservative numbers by relying upon the ordinance. Is that accurate?
Yes, and our traffic engineer will get
Right,
into that. Yep.
absolutely, but just wanted to highlight that there are obviously ITE standards, which we'll get to, but we took a conservative approach.
Yeah, parking should not be a problem here, and our traffic engineer will dive into that. So 63 parking spaces are required, and as I mentioned, we have 76 proposed. So we're 13 spaces over. The board's planner had pointed out that in our parking calculations, we have not provided provisions to accommodate for wholesale and retail parts. Spoke to Mr. Fincy about that. He said maybe they get 1, 2, maybe 3 people a day that would come in and buy a part. So given the fact that we have 13 more parking spaces than are required, we should easily be able to accommodate a one car for picking up parts. So we do have one 12 by 32 foot loading space, which is proposed in the back of the building. This loading space is really designated to handle daily deliveries from UPS and FedEx. Standard parts and supplies are delivered at nighttime, and then car deliveries will happen on the westerly side of the site. The car carrier will park along the front of the building where the display parking spaces are located. And no vehicles will be unloaded on Route 22, as previously discussed. It's anticipated, as Mr. Fincy discussed, that there'll be 2 to 3 deliveries per week. The site's been designed to handle the car carrier, tractor trailer, and as a recent discussion with the fire department this week, they actually gave us a different fire truck. We selected one from the website. In a discussion with them, they wanted us to use a very specific fire truck, so we were able to get the model of that fire truck and route it through our site. We were able to show that it works and accommodates this particular fire truck, which is called the Green Knoll Fire Pierce Velocity Tower Truck. So the site can handle that. We'll confirm that with the fire department. We'll show them the truck turning movements with respect to the fire truck. We do have a relatively large trash and recycling area that's located in the back of the site adjacent to 287. And it's anticipated that pickup will happen once a week. You know, if it's determined that there's more garbage than that, then the owner will arrange for additional pickups. The pickups will be from a private hauler.
Is that in the upper left-hand corner?
That's in the top left-hand corner of the exhibit.
2 slots there?
Those 2 rectangle darker slots.
Thank you.
They will be cinder block enclosed, or?
They will be enclosed with a fence, right? That was actually the next thing I was going to say.
Thank you.
So they will be screened by a 6-foot-high solid fence. There's the rear car inventory, which is located directly behind the building. They're triple stacked behind the building. As discussed, that area will be fenced in for security purposes. The site's been designed to keep the customer activity to the eastern section of the site, which will eliminate conflicts with service operations and deliveries that occur on the westerly side of the site. So I threw a lot at you about parking and spaces. I just want to kind of bring that all together and run through this exhibit. So westbound on 2022, car pulls into the site. We've got our customer parking is the first bay of parking that a car would see as they pull into the site. They always want to park closest to the building anyway. So our customer parking will be located in this particular area. The customer, if they're coming in for service, they'll pull in front of the building and pull into the service drop-off area. Located in the building, and our architect will discuss this a little further in depth, there is the lobby area for people who are waiting for their car to get serviced, which is directly adjacent to the customer parking. So we do have the customer parking. We have used cars directly on the easterly side of the site. Our employee parking are located in the northeasterly side of the site. The new car inventory, as I mentioned, are located directly behind the proposed building. And then we have 26 service spaces on the westerly sideline directly adjacent to the Honda dealership. So the way the circulation works for a tractor trailer or the fire truck would pull in, drive around the building, and exit out through the site, being able to access completely around the back of the building. There will be a Knox box for the gate that'll allow the fire department to gain access through the security gate that's providing security for those vehicles behind the building. We do have service entrances located at the back that'll be used by the staff. We also have detail bays, 3 detail bays, and in the back left-hand corner of the building, we have a car wash proposed. So that's basically the site, how it's going to flow.
Can I just ask a quick question about that? Don't mean to jump the gun if you're going to get there, but talk a little bit about any like signage on site that'll direct people to the designated areas if you can.
Right. Okay. So we do have the infamous signage.
Not that signage.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to talk about that. I have a feeling we're going to end up with one sign, but we still may need relief from that sign, right? So I just wanted to bring that up. We are proposing a sign that's located 20 feet from the right-of-way. The sign would be 95 feet from the travel way located in Route 22. So although we're a little close to the right-of-way, I don't think the ordinance contemplated such a wide right-of-way. So it's incredibly far from the traveled way, which I don't think was the intent of the ordinance. But as far as the signage goes for the site, we really don't have that many directional signs. After we did receive the reports, we thought that it would make sense to have a sign located at the back of the building. If somebody is pulling out of the site, customers picking their car up, that would direct them to the right, keeping them on the easterly side of the site to direct them out onto Route 202. We can also have a directional sign that shows that this is the customer parking and to continue to head left in order to get to the service bay area.
Where is that, or where would that be, Mark?
That would be in the first island that you enter coming into the site. As I mentioned, we've water, sewer, gas, electric will be extended from the public right-of-way to the building. The fire department, in our discussions with them, also wanted a fire department connection, which we'll put in front of the westerly detention basin across the parking lot from the front of the building.
Mr. Walker, you're referring to the January 27th, 2025 letter?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
And also, we actually had discussions with them before they issued that report.
Right, so you're in full compliance, and the ladder truck you mentioned before was also on the letter, and you're in agreement with that as well?
We are in full agreement with them.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to stormwater detention, everybody's favorite subject.
Could we, before we go to that, because that's a big issue?
Sure.
The car wash.
Yes.
Is that hose in an area that you're going to wash cars down? It's not a public accessed?
No, it's
use.
only for the cars on the site, and our architect will talk more about the function of the car wash and how it
It
works.
won't be open to members of the public to pull in for a wash?
No,
After a
it will
salty,
not.
snowy storm?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so why don't we stipulate that, because it did sound like that your testimony did indicate a car wash use, and I just want to make sure you're not asking for that.
We're not. It's specifically for the dealership.
I'll clarify, it's specifically accessory to the dealership.
Great, and for use by the dealership. Got it.
So with respect to stormwater, we've done a number of developments with Paul Miller Group, and a lot of the sites that we've worked on are much smaller with less setbacks, less green area, and we've been forced to do a lot of under the parking lot stormwater designs, which are incredibly expensive and not truly meeting the BMP requirements that the DEP is looking for. I mean, it meets the requirements because there's no other option, but in this particular instance, we're really fortunate to have the space to be able to provide the best stormwater that we can design, that's intended to be designed under the BMP. So we have five different stormwater management areas, and just looking at Exhibit A1, going from the west side, we have a bioretention basin, and in the middle of the site at the front, we have another bioretention basin, and then we have a slightly larger basin on the easterly side of the site, and then there are two smaller basins that are actually located in the DOT right-of-way. And those are interesting. The DOT actually allows you to provide stormwater management within their right-of-way if there's no other alternative. But clearly, it's the applicant's responsibility to maintain those basins even though they're in the DOT right-of-way. And our traffic engineer will discuss this a little bit, but we are going to be required to get a DOT permit. So they will also be reviewing our stormwater. So the DEP has jurisdiction on our stormwater. We filed for DEP permits. We've gotten around to review comments from the DEP, and we've addressed those. So we're very close to getting our DEP comments. Once the DOT permit is submitted, we're going to get more review comments from the DOT. The DOT is typically more interested in how we're impacting their system rather than providing environmental safeguards. So the DEP is more concerned about the environmental safeguards, and the DOT is really more concerned about what's the impact of their system. And then we also have the review from your board engineer as well, and we received some comments from him. But let me just get into the design a little bit so everybody understands what we're trying to accomplish. We have a couple of drainage areas. We have a drainage area that goes to Cuckles Brook, and then we have a drainage area that goes to Route 22. So what we've done is we've broken the site up into drainage areas that maintains the drainage pattern basically as it exists today. And we have a discharge for the basin number 3, which is the eastern basin, which will discharge directly into Cuckles Brook. And then we have basin 1 and basin 2, and the two smaller basins in DOT right-of-way that will discharge directly into piping infrastructure in Route 22. Okay, we talked about the rain gardens. And the project, as you might guess, is a major stormwater development, and it's been designed to meet the DEP stormwater regulations for water quality, infiltration, and rates of runoff. As I mentioned, we've filed applications with the DEP, and we've received review comments, and we're anticipating approval from them in the near future. So one of the applications that we also filed for was the letter of interpretation, which is about the wetlands, small wetland pocket in the northeasterly corner of the site. And we've also filed for what's called a flood hazard area verification, which deals with the flood hazard area aspect in streams. So that flood hazard area verification will indicate most likely that we have a 50-foot riparian buffer and that the flood hazard elevation that we have designed based on the rules is accurate. And the way that we designed the flood hazard elevation, there's no flood hazard elevation. It's not a studied stream per the DEP, and it's not on the FEMA maps as being a flood area, but because the flow through the Cuckles Brook is larger than 50 acres, we need to establish a flood hazard elevation for the site. So there are a couple alternatives. We could have done a more detailed study, which is actually a model of the stream, which costs a lot of money. Application fees are very expensive. Or we could just say, hey, the flood elevation is 11 feet above the brook. The DEP is good with it because they know it's incredibly conservative and will establish the flood elevation that way. And because of the riparian buffer length, the flood elevation fell within that riparian buffer. And we didn't really want to disturb much of that riparian buffer. You know, we really need a good reason to disturb any of that riparian buffer. So we took the easier permitting route, but more conservatively. We selected the estimated technique, which gives us 11 feet above the brook for our flood elevation. So that's how we established the flood elevation, and that's the premise for the permits that we're seeking with the DEP.
Get some clarification on that.
Sure.
So you're saying that the elevation is very conservative in terms of your flood elevation?
It's very conservative, yes.
The flooding would occur from like a cloudburst event? Like what type of event kind of causes the flooding here?
All right, so what the DEP has done, and you may know this, about a year and a half ago, they changed the flood elevations, and if it was a studied stream, they increased the flood elevations by 2 feet. So they're basically, the new DEP flood elevations are 3 feet higher than the basic FEMA studies that are out there for flood insurance purposes. So for permitting, what we have to deal with is basically elevations that are 3 feet above that. And they also, in modeling the streams, they also took the rainfall intensity storms, which used to be 8 inches over a 24-hour period, and they increased that by 50% to 12 inches. So they've really, looking out to the future, they've based these new changes based on the year 2100. So this is what they're anticipating in the year 2100, and currently now, 70 some odd years earlier, we're designing for the year 2100. So it's creating a lot of issues in towns that have flood hazard areas, and really limiting any development potential within those particular areas.
Okay. So in year 2100, would you say your elevation exceeds like a 100-year storm in 2100 or 500-year? Like where are you in that kind of metric?
This is how, before they went from 8 inches to 12 inches, the study was to take the 100-year storm event and add 25% to it. And that's how the DEP established their New Jersey flood hazard elevation, higher than the firm maps, right? Higher than the flood insurance maps. Now they've just added 2 feet or 50% more of rainfall that you have to account for. So it's a difficult question that you asked. You have a sense of the extent that they've increased the flow design. This is not the actual flow, this is what we have to design for.
Okay, I think I understand your response. I just want to kind of get that, you're saying that this elevation here will suffice a major storm in 75 years from now.
Yes.
Okay, so you see no concern with the property and flooding in,
Not on this property. This property is, the design elevation is about 14 feet above the Cuckles Brook.
okay. And on the repairing area, what's the purpose of that kind of yellow,
What's the purpose of a repairing buffer? All right, so, good question. So, especially in this particular instance, there's no wetlands associated with Cuckles Brook. So, I don't know, 20 years ago, you could build 25 feet from Cuckles Brook, right? No permit, no design criteria, no issues at all. So they introduced, over the years, they've introduced riparian buffers for waterways, lakes, streams, ponds, things like that. And those riparian buffers can be as large as 300 feet, but the majority are 50 feet. So if you're not draining to trout production, or if you have threatened or endangered species within the area, your riparian buffer could go up to 300 feet. But we don't have that in this particular instance. The likelihood is we're going to get the 50-foot riparian buffer.
thank you.
Mr. Walker, could you give the board a sense of where the Gannett building was? Because this was a developed piece of property before. It had a use, and, you know, the Cuckles Brook has always been there. You know, just give the board kind of some, it doesn't have to be exact, but just some sense of what was developed and kind of where, in terms of the boundary of this land, that building was and operating on a daily basis.
Almost identically to what we have shown here.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
It's an easy answer.
That was easy.
Building or the parking lot?
The building and the parking lot.
In the parking lot.
Yep.
The footprint was essentially the same.
It's essentially in the same area.
And how many trees were you proposing to remove here?
So we actually got a waiver from that particular item for submission to the board, but we did locate trees as part of our agreement to getting the waiver. So in our revisions, when we address the plans for the planner and the engineer, we'll be showing those trees, and I'll be able to give you an exact answer.
So ballpark me, how many trees are going to be pulled out of here?
I think it's less than 20.
All right, and would the applicant be willing to stipulate that we'll find somewhere either on this site or in Bridgewater, they're going to plant 20 trees?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Whatever the deficiency ends up being.
Okay, and if it's 25 or 30, you're okay with whatever the number is?
I just would point out, and the board's, or it's already been said to this, but this was a fully developed site, so if there is vegetation, we'd have to, it's very difficult to see what.
No, I understand the scrub brush and whatnot, but we're talking about, you know, fully formed trees.
Right, yes.
That have designation in the lot. We're going to make every effort to replant them on site, and if not, we'll put them somewhere nice in Bridgewater.
We will comply.
Great, thank you.
I have a question.
Please, Mrs. Amin.
On this particular drawing, on the right-hand side of the building, you show new car delivery spot. It says new car delivery.
Speak into the mic.
New car delivery in the building, on the building. And then there is another door next to it. So are there two delivery spots or just one? The way you show is one delivery spot for new car inside the building, right?
So the new cars are going to be outside the building, in the back of the building.
No, see, from the outside to go into the building, on your drawing you show one spot for new car delivery. It says.
New car delivery?
Right, it says right on your drawing.
Yeah, so the new car delivery is going to occur.
No, on the right
on your
hand,
plans, you
right-hand
wrote
side
it.
of the building, the vertical line, you see that?
Yeah, on the right side.
On the
says new
right
car
side of the
delivery.
Car
building.
delivery inside the.
Yeah, that one.
Yes.
So right underneath, there is another door. So you have two delivery spots? That's what my question.
Yeah, our architect will discuss that a little bit more in detail, but when you go to pick up your new car, that's where you'll go into that
okay.
space, sit in your new car, they'll explain it to you, and then you can drive out.
I
I
see.
believe that's the intent of that space.
Oh, okay, okay.
They didn't do that last time you bought a car? They didn't bring you inside? Teach you how to work it.
So, should I proceed?
Oh, please.
Okay, thank you. So with all these DEP rules and regulations, we are required to add a substantial amount of plant material within these detention basins. What we currently have on the plan for the detention basins are river birch, winterberry, red dogwood, buttonbush, sweet pepperbush, and high bush blueberry. So there's a mixture of all those plants within these 5 detention basin areas.
And those are species required by DEP?
They are, that's correct, yes. And again, that's being reviewed by the DEP. Within the site itself, the front building foundation and parking island areas will have creeping junipers, sergeant junipers, dwarf red spira, Fitzer juniper, variegated lily turf, little Richard gloss albia, flower carpet pink roses, and we also have some hornbeams proposed, which are columnar trees against the building, and we also have columnar trees proposed along the right-of-way on Route 22 at every 50 feet. Our project architect will address site lighting. Let's see. So with respect to some general zoning comments, the building will be 2 stories, 27 feet. In this particular zone, we're actually allowed 3 stories and 45 feet, so the building is substantially smaller than what's allowed. The project complies with impervious cover and FAR, even after it's adjusted for the slopes that are within the property. The project complies with the side yard setback and combined side yard setback. The combined side yard setback requirement's 100 feet, and we have proposed 366.5 feet. We do, as been discussed, we do have some variances for the project. I just would like to identify them. We'll have other witnesses that'll provide more proofs for them, but as part of the site plan, I just wanted to be able to point those out to the board. So the use variances for the car dealership in the GC zone, the front yard setback for the building, 100.5 where 200 is required. The front yard setback for parking, 50.5 where 100 is required. The width of the parking stalls, 9 by 18 where 9.5 versus 9.5 by 18 is required. Let me just touch on that a little bit. 9 by 18 is pretty much an industry standard parking space. I could see the 9.5 by 18 space if we were in a more turnover type scenario where customers are coming in and going and there's a lot more activity on the site. We don't anticipate that. So the 9 by 18, which is the industry standard, will function quite well on this particular site.
And the ordinance permits the 9 by 18 for the other parking spaces, right?
It does.
Right.
That's correct. For employee parking. Loading space size 12 by 32, where 12 by 50 is required. So we had some discussion about that. Sign setback 20 feet, where 30 feet is required. Right, currently, there's a variance requested for 3 freestanding signs where only 1 is allowed. The freestanding sign area of 250.3 feet, which 84.42 feet is allowed, is also up for discussion. The average lighting foot candle, which our architect will discuss, is 2 foot candles, where 1.5 foot candles is allowed. Also, in reviewing the engineer's report, he had pointed out that there is a substantial landscaping ordinance that we've gone through actually this afternoon, and I had a couple of conversations with Bill about it, and so I just want to bring this up. It's not referenced in our plans. It was referenced in Bill's report for us to discuss. So let me just run through those really quick. So we're referencing section 126-199 in the ordinance. One of the requirements is to have more than one type of street tree. Currently, all we have are the hornbeams every 50 feet on the right-of-way. So we will comply with that and add in some variety of trees in that area. There's also a requirement based on our disturbance that we need to provide 114 trees. So as discussed, the site was previously developed, totally demolished, and it's just kind of sitting there with scrub brush. It's not a site that's a wooded site. So in this particular instance, we will be seeking a variance. So we are proposing 15 trees on the site where 114 are required. The next is dealing with the number of shrubs required. Again, it's 10 shrubs for every 5,000 square feet of disturbance, which equates to 228 shrubs required. We actually have 316 shrubs proposed. However, currently we don't meet this requirement because there's a specific list of shrubs that we can have. And under the DEP requirements, they give us a number of choices of shrubs that we can put within the basins. We've selected 6 different shrubs that we could put in the basins. 3 of them don't comply with your requirements. So we can change those shrubs and have less variety of shrubs, or the board can grant us a variance to allow the variety of shrubs. We really have no preference, and whatever the board chooses, we'd be glad to go along with.
Or alternatively, we would be happy to work with the board's professionals on that.
Perfect.
So there's also a requirement that there's 1 shade tree for every 10 parking spaces. We are a car dealership with brand new, high-end, beautiful cars. Car dealers do not like trees. They do not like them. So we've been specifically instructed no shade trees, and most of the storage is in the back of the lot, and our landscaping is all in the front part of the property, which is what everybody will see when they're driving by on Route 22 and when they pull into the site. So a variance would be required for that. There's also a requirement to have curbed islands that are 4 feet in width, which we do have for the customer parking and in front of the building. And again, this variance requirement occurs at the rear of the site where we have car storage and most of the back-end operation of the facility. The last one, there's a requirement that if you have 20 cars in a row, that you need to have a break and, again, have a landscaping island. So this situation occurs only in 2 locations. One is along the common side with the Honda. And as you can see on Exhibit A1, our parking is going to be way more organized than what they have on their particular lot. And again, This is on the service side of the site. This is not on the customer side of the site. And then the other area where it occurs is in the back of the property where we have the new car inventory located. So a variance would be required for that. So taking our plans and reviewing the landscaping ordinance, there were seven items that we needed relief from. We spent a lot of time looking at this afternoon, and we were able to eliminate 2 of those. And as we've indicated, we're also willing to try to plant more trees on the site, plant trees somewhere else within the town, and if needed, provide some capital for the landscape fund. So we're very willing to cooperate with the board and trying to meet this requirement the best we can.
No, I appreciate that, and just keep working with Bill and with Catherine on that, and we'll make sure that, you know, either the trees get on site or they'll get elsewhere in Bridgewater. I think that's good discussions to keep having.
Right.
If I can ask you just a couple of questions, unless, do you have, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Nope, go ahead.
Okay, all right. You had mentioned easements earlier on in your testimony, you listed them. Do any of the easements impact this development?
No, they do not. Actually, we developed the site to be outside of those easements that I discussed.
Excellent. And you did mention the loading space size. We're also providing 1 loading space instead of 2 loading spaces. So I was just wondering, from your professional opinion, do you think that 1 loading space is sufficient and a loading space that is smaller than the size required?
Yeah, because the larger loading is going to occur after hours for the parts and other supplies. So that loading area is really more for the FedEx trucks and the UPS trucks and maybe some smaller single unit deliveries, odd deliveries that we get. But the bigger deliveries are going to occur after hours. And then as we discussed, the car unloading will take place where the display parking spaces are shown.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. Can you just talk a little bit about snow plowing, removal, things of that nature?
Sure, yeah. So the way that will work, since we have inventory on the site, each area of the parking lot will be targeted for snow clearing. Those cars within that area would be removed. The snow would be plowed along the curb line, and then those cars would be brought back into place. And then they'd move on to another area and perform the same duties. So if we did happen to get a larger snow event and the curb line areas couldn't handle the amount of snow, the snow would be collected, put on a dump truck, and taken off the site. And that would have to be arranged with the management and a company that would handle that.
Great. And then Mr. Burr probably would bring this up. I'm going to get a little specific. There is a notation, item H on page 5. We talked about this yesterday. I was wondering if you could just address the recommendation in the engineering review memo about amending the storm sewer layout.
Yeah, so I guess one of the comments also in the report was, is there any impact because of the flood hazard elevation? The flood hazard elevation comes up, and then we have our stormwater detention basin that's filling up with stormwater, and the water has to get let out of the basin and discharge into the stream that under an extreme storm event would be full of stormwater, and what the impact of that would be. So there's a tailwater calculation that we're willing to do, but in this particular area where we will be discharging, the flood elevation is actually 2 feet below the bottom of our basin, so we don't anticipate any issues relative to that. And then the other items that he brought up relative to inverts and pipe flows, we'll work directly with him to resolve any inconsistencies on that.
Great. And then just very quickly, 2 other items. This might be a better question for the architect, but can you just confirm that the roof area from the new building will drain to the proposed on-site stormwater management systems?
Yes, it will.
And then,
And I think the other part of that comment was, will the leaders and downspouts be sized for a 25-year storm? So the answer is yes.
great. And then, you might have touched upon this, I'm sorry, but can you just talk about the soil logs and whether they're included with the stormwater management report?
Yeah, so we did, as part of our design, we need to do certain number of soil logs within each basin area. We did those soil logs, and they're all on the plans. The depth to seasonal high groundwater is between 9 and 12 feet deep. So there's no impact to seasonal high groundwater with respect to our stormwater design.
Great. So unless otherwise noted, we can comply with all the revision requests in Mr. Burr's.
There's just a couple other items.
Sure, go ahead, I'm
So
sorry.
there was one comment about earthwork and soil movement. So we did an earthwork study, and we're showing that we need to import only 380 cubic yards for this development. So the site is essentially balanced relative to earthwork. There's also one other comment about flood damage prevention ordinance. And we're actually, that ordinance does not apply to this particular site because we're not in the special flood hazard area for Bridgewater as defined in the ordinance.
I have no further questions.
All right, thanks, Mr. Silbert. I have a question on the Cooklesbrook. Obviously, just as a layman, it makes me nervous, and the proximity to Adamsville Lane. So I went back to 2021, and I pulled the resolution for that case, which was called the Gateway 70B resolution, and a titan of industry named Jeff Lair was the attorney in that case. And specifically, it's Block 221, Lot 101. And essentially, the Cooklesbrook goes under Route 22 and goes to that gateway property. I just want to make sure, because the engineering memo that Mr. Burr put together was incredibly technical, and I think very thorough. But ultimately, if the Cooklesbrook has an issue with maintenance and there's debris in there, all bets are off. And I want to make sure that the township has a right of entry. And the Gateway 70B 2021 resolution, I'll give you a copy. It's on page 19. It's condition 10. I'm just going to read it in the record for you, and you can come back to us with how you want to word it. The applicant shall dedicate an access easement for right-of-way entry so that it may inspect the waterway located in the vicinity of the southeast corner of the property. Obviously, that will change in its sole and reasonable discretion. And at the sole cost of the applicant or a successor, the township may clear or otherwise maintain the waterway on the applicant's property in a reasonable way, but shall not be obligated. All right, so you guys need to work on that, but again, I just look at that in terms of a logistical critical area. If the Cooklesbrook needs maintenance or has an issue, and the town, you're not responsive to the town, or a future owner of the property is not responsible and essentially returning the calls of the township, we got to get in there. We got to fix it. So I want to make sure that you understand that.
Fortunately, I drafted the easement for that, and it hasn't been constructed, but I have an easement, and I will recycle that easement.
Jeff took all the credit, you did all the work.
No, Jeff did the
All right,
application, so he did the behind-the-scenes work.
All right, fair enough.
But we can agree to that.
Thank you, Mr. Silbert. Board questions? None? Board professionals?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, you had mentioned in your testimony that when you did your lot coverage and FAR calculations, you took into account the hillside development. Just give us a quick overview of where there are steep slopes on this property, and is there any disturbance plus 30%?
Yeah, sure. We actually have a slope map in our plan. This guy's the best attorney ever. He picked up my pen I just dropped.
Oh, he's going to send you a bill.
So looking at sheet 8 of 14 in the plan set, we do have one area that's being disturbed for the pipe discharge down to Cooklesbrook, but that disturbance is allowed under the ordinance because it's for a utility line. Other than that, there are no disturbances within those darker slopes, so the dark, if you look on the slope map, the white area is non-regulated slopes less than 10%, and then the grayer is a little steeper, and then when you get to the dark color, those are the slopes that are greater than 30%. So we're not disturbing any slopes greater than 30%, except for that one stormwater connection down to Cuckles Brook.
And so you had also testified that there are a few permits that are necessary from DEP. I think you mentioned you filed for an LOI, delineate to get their acknowledgement of the delineation of the wetlands, and then likely will require a wetlands permit? Is that?
No, actually, you don't need a wetlands permit. We just need flood hazard area permits. So it's individual flood hazard area permits for our stormwater discharge and some minor disturbances for parking lot construction, all within the limits that the DEP allows.
And you indicated that you have already filed for those permits, and DEP already gave you comments back, right?
That's correct.
And what was the nature of their comments? Was there anything in there that would lead you to believe that you can't address any
Nope,
of their
they were pretty mild comments.
So you would expect to be able to acquire those permits?
We're expecting to get our permits relatively soon.
Okay. From a stormwater perspective, I won't do a deep dive. I think the comments in my report tell the story. We did a very, very thorough stormwater review of this application because there has been a lot of concern, a lot of scrutiny, a lot of review over the last number of years of that Cucklesbrook corridor. What I heard from you, though, was you're willing to revise either your plans or calculations to comply with all of our comments, essentially.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
I mean, I think I wanted to discuss with you a couple of the pipe comments. I don't think they're not impactful for our stormwater design at all, but I think we can work that out.
But in the grand scheme of things, your design meets all DEP requirements, the township stormwater control ordinance requirements, and your testimony is that this site will not have a negative impact beyond what it's contributing downstream now.
That's correct. And, just to, make the board feel a little bit more comfortable about this, under the stormwater regulations, one basin is allowed to take 2.5 acres of runoff. We have 5 basins in here, and the whole site's 5 acres. So we have really spread our stormwater out in a very large area, which helps the water infiltrate into the ground over a large area than in a really smaller confined area. So I think that's a major benefit to this project, and it also helps soften the look of the site because we did add in so much landscaping associated with those basins.
And one of the facts that I guess allows you to make that statement is that all of these basins will be maintained by the applicant.
That's correct.
And there will be an operations and maintenance manual prepared and submitted if the application's approved.
That's correct.
That'll be filed on the deed of the property with the county.
As part of the DEP's requirements, when we get the permit, they will require us, they don't require the maintenance, operation and maintenance manual until they know they're going to approve the project, because it's very specific, relating to specific documents that they are approving with specific dates. So once they get ready to approve it, they'll call us and they'll say, we're ready for the operation and maintenance manual, and we'll provide it at that time. And that's a document that gets recorded, I believe, in your office, correct?
With the county.
With the county?
You'll provide us with a copy of it, but it'll be recorded with the county.
Right, okay.
Okay. Just a few more questions. In the front of the proposed building, I guess it's the easterly portion of the building, which would be the sales showroom. There's a
Yes.
drop-off area that's shown that's 14 feet by 35 feet. Did you mention in your prior testimony what that drop-off area is going to be used for?
I didn't mention it, but it's, so if somebody drops their car off to get serviced and they get picked up and they come back later on that day, they can be dropped off in that area. Or if somebody wants to test drive a car, They'll bring the car around and park it in that area. So it gives a lot of flexibility for the site, that little drop-off area.
But operationally, the service activity, there's going to be a center driveway with a roll-up door.
That's
and
correct,
How that
yeah.
functions and service vehicles, people that are dropping off for service will be able to drive their vehicle right into the building.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We're going to hear testimony, I think, about lighting you mentioned. That's your architect, correct?
That's correct.
There's an emergency generator being proposed. Is that correct, or is that the architect?
Yeah, so we have a transformer and emergency generator proposed in the front left portion of the building, on the service side of the building. So that's on the, I guess, the southwesterly corner of the building.
Do you know how big that generator would be?
I'm going to let the architect talk about that.
Fair enough. There was prior testimony about chain link fencing with perhaps privacy slats enclosing the new car inventory.
Correct.
Do you know how tall that fence is proposed to be? I didn't see it anywhere on the plan. I could be mistaken.
I believe it's, how tall do you want the fence, security fence? 6? It'll be 6 feet.
Perfect. Lucky for you, 6 feet is the maximum allowed. So that's good.
It's like we knew that.
Yeah, exactly. 4 feet in the front yard, 6 feet in the side and rear yard.
Okay.
I think we heard testimony about landscaping. You've made a commitment to address or remove some of the prior relief. I think there were 2 items that you had sought relief for. You're going to take those off the table, add some additional plantings, and also provide compensation for the trees that are going to be removed as a result of this as well.
That's correct, yes.
Very good. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. One just major correction on this document. This is Somerset County. It says Morris.
Okay, yeah. Good to be in the right county.
Yeah, so all of the exhibits here, A1, A3, A4, you can make that correction and make sure it's the proper county.
Fair enough.
Good catch, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just had a few questions. It was brought up kind of early in engineer's testimony, but I'd identified that some of the architectural plan programming for the building was kind of not captured by the parking calculation. Now, there is no set, prescribed parking ratio for a car dealership in our ordinance, but they utilized automobile service station, which relies upon the bay areas and the number of them, and then the sales area as office space, which is a 1 per 300. I know that it was mentioned that they are overparked based on the calculation, and there was some anecdotal testimony about the ability for parts and things like that to be captured under that excess parking that they're providing. But what I really wanted to see was a parking calculation that's reflective of the site, so we can actually guarantee that a parking variance isn't required. Not necessarily that operationally it'll work, but that the parking is sufficient for the ordinance requirements. And that isn't just the parts section, but it's that there is future bays that are included on the plans, at the car wash, which I think you said there is no car wash portion, but that those areas are currently, as far as square footage, not captured in the parking calculation. So they should be in some way, shape, or form.
We can have our traffic engineer address that a little bit more in detail. Those 2 future bays, though, those are going to be detail bays. They're going to be relabeled on the architectural plans.
I think, regardless, the square footage right now is not captured, and that's what I think, in some sense, needs to be.
Okay, understood.
As far as the landscape deficiencies, I know you had some correspondence with Bill to address that. Can those notes be added to the landscape sheet? So any variance or waivers that are being sought, just revise them on the landscape sheet. I think it's sheet 5 of 14.
Yes, we will.
That would be helpful. And then as far as the species choice for the landscaping, most of the choices right now, as far as trees and shrubs, are non-native, and then the bioretention plantings are native. Probably, I think DEP requires that to be. So if there are any revisions to the landscaping plan as you look back at it, if there are other options, it doesn't necessarily need to be all plantings are native throughout the site, because sometimes that's not the best either. But if you could choose a mixture of some native trees.
Yeah, I will follow what the ordinance has. They have a whole list of plants that we can use for shrubs or trees. We'll follow the ordinance.
Okay, and I know you'd mentioned that, trees aren't necessarily something a dealer wants.
Yeah.
There are some choices on here that are, fruiting trees, which may not be great for cars, and fast-growing fruiting trees, which are, maybe not great. So keep that in mind, and I'm sure we could work together on that. That's fine.
Thank you.
Other than that, I don't think I have anything else for this witness.
Great, thank you very much. Members of the public, questions on the engineering testimony you heard tonight? All right, seeing none. I have 9:52, Mr. Silver. You get 8 more minutes.
So it's Brian Hartzell was sworn in. He's an electrical engineer. He's just going to talk about the lighting plan that was included in the site plan.
Let's just get his credentials real quick on
Absolutely.
the record. And we'll utilize your 7 minutes.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hartzell, if you can, and I'll give you this microphone here. Just for the record and the benefit of the board, can you just provide us with your educational background and credentials, please?
First, start with your name and spell your last name, please.
Yes. Hello, my name is Brian Hartzell. Last name is spelled Hartzel. I basically have a BSEE from University of Missouri from 1992. I've been practicing electrical engineering for over 30 years. I've been working for EI Associates for 5, and I received my PE degree in 2022. So I've been a practicing PE for 3 years with over 30 years experience.
And licensed in New Jersey?
I am licensed in New Jersey and Louisiana.
All right, great. We accept you as an expert in engineering.
Thank you. In your packet of drawings, you have a drawing A4. This is basically the site lighting for the car dealer. We have basically picked 3 fixtures, an E1 that provides lighting throughout the parking lot, around the perimeter of the parking lot itself. We have a C fixture which provides down lighting, basically wall wash, along the east, the north, and west side of the building, with a few D-style down lights in the front near the main entrance to the building. The reason for we picked the fixture E1 is that, especially along the property lines, it provides a excuse me, a cutoff in the light so that there is no flow or flooding of light onto the other properties. So it basically cuts it off at the poles, and that would be along the west and the east side of the parking lot, as well as the north and the south. Based on our calculations, we are well within the boundary line requirement of 1 foot candle. We're actually less than 1 foot candle at the property line. At the entrances, you're allowed a maximum of 3 foot candles. We actually have less than that. We're between 1 and 1.5 at each of the entrances on the property line. Where we kind of differ in the ordinances, the total average foot candles for the whole property, where it's supposed to be 1.5, we actually have it set at 2-foot candles as our average. And the reason for this is because we need it for security of public and the safety for personnel and for the use of cameras to monitor the facility after hours. So we got to have proper lighting. Unless there's some questions,
I don't have any questions.
No questions? Board questions? Board professionals?
Just two quick questions. There was a variance mentioned, I think 1.5 foot candle average is what's required. You
That is
guys
what
are
that's what your ordinance requires, and we're looking.
averaging what?
We get a foot candle level of 2, and it's we need this for the security and the proper functioning of our security cameras.
Okay. And will all the exterior lighting be shielded so as not to create nuisance or hazard to adjacent properties or the motoring public?
Well, along the perimeters, the way the apertures are set for the fixtures, there is no flooding of excess lighting into other properties. Like I said, it cuts it off at the poles themselves. And the way the lights are set up, and because we're up to 70 feet from the main 22, that there would be no influence of our lighting onto Route 22 from our building, just because of the distance.
And I had asked earlier about the ability to dim or lower the lights at the close of business. That's an ordinance requirement. Is that something with the lighting package that's proposed? Can that be accommodated?
Well, we'll be in discussions with the ownership on how they want to proceed with that piece, and then we'll, take their advisement as our design.
But it is possible with your design to lower the intensity of the lights in the off hours if that's a condition of the board's approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I just want to put on the record, again, I'm not an expert in security cameras, but, I have security cameras on my home. They pick up details in low light. So, your camera technology has improved vastly in the last 5 years. That's something that maybe you should look at in your design elements versus the foot candle elements. And I just want to put that out there, something for you guys to look into.
Well, the other aspect is we need to, especially when people approach the dealership at night, they can go up and they can wander around and look at cars. So, we do have to have proper foot candle for people to visit.
I'm talking about 2 in the morning on a Sunday night. I want to make sure that the astronomer that lives up the hill isn't getting any lights cast and is going to be angry at the zoning board because he can't see Jupiter.
I understand that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Members of the public. Oh, I'm sorry. Catherine, did you have any questions?
I have no questions for this witness.
All right. Members of the public, questions on the lighting and engineering testimony you heard? See none? The
That's
time
pretty
is...
good. One more minute.
Yeah, you got 1 more minute. Are you done?
Am I allowed to call another witness? or-
Sure. You got 1 more minute.
Of architecture? I don't remember the board's rules, if they're cut off at 10 o'clock or no new witnesses after 10 o'clock.
No new testimony after 10 p.m.
All right. Well, then I think,
Yeah. It's over.
I tried. I really.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna wrap up here. Members of the public, I apologize for not opening up the questions immediately, but it seems that we had none. Again, I just want to make a call. Members of the public that would like to speak in any land use issue that was not on our agenda, now is the time to approach. Again, let the record reflect that there was none. The next meeting, Nancy, could you help us out with packets and what we're hearing at our February 11th meeting? I know we handed out a number of different packets. Should the board members all have the materials they need for those 2 cases that night?
February 11th, yes, you should have, no, take that back. You have Visions and Pathways. I have Rockland APV.
Okay. Okay, so there will be delivery that will go out. Members of the public, our next meeting is February 11th, 2025, 7 p.m. in this room. If there's no other board business,
We need
we need to tell you when you're coming back.
Before you close,
Yeah.
we would love to be back here as soon as possible.
All right.
What's the next available?
March 25th?
Oh, I was going to suggest March 25th. No, I'm sorry. I was going to suggest March 11th because Starbucks needs to renotice. Belly Holdings has been carried for, as you all know, going on a year. If they're not ready to proceed, at least if we offer March 11th, there could potentially be a slot there.
And if somehow Belly did come back, could we make sure that March 25th, we could get them in?
March 25th is 2 new applications, including a storage facility.
So what would happen if Starbucks,
So if 311 didn't pan out, we'd have to carry them to 4-1. 4-1 is technically the first open meeting. I'm sorry, 4-8.
or 8, okay.
We're booked, double booked, or triple booked every meeting.
Yep.
Until April.
All right, so Mr. Silver, it sounds like we're going to attempt March 11th.
Sir, do we have priority over applications that haven't already commenced? I would just don't know customary how it works.
Starbucks has been,
Not Starbucks, right? Nancy had mentioned 2 that hadn't started, but we could work it out. It's okay.
Belly Holdings, though, I mean, they've been scheduled for 311, so.
technically, we did start that case. And it blew up in the first 20 minutes, but it did start, so.
Fair enough.
We'll let the lawyer, you guys duke it out. But, I do want to get you back in here. We're going to put you down for March 11th. Worst case, it would come back on 4-8 if both of those applicants.
Let me just confirm and make sure.
Unless you want 4/8 now, so you know you have it.
Say that again?
Unless you want the April 8th date now, so you know that you have it. Because on the 11th, I don't know how much time you're going to have. Starbucks is a definite. I don't know about Belly, but
Starbucks is.
Yeah, I mean, the chances of actually proceeding on the 11th are slim,
yeah.
unless Belly backs out again.
Yeah. And Mike, Starbucks is resubmitting a whole new site plan. It's not like they're coming back with some tweaks. It's a whole new site plan.
If we take April 11th,
April 8th.
I'm sorry, April 8th, we are guaranteed per Mr. Oler's suggestion that we would be,
I think you could have the whole night.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay. We will take it.
All right.
Thank you.
Sold to you. All right, so this case is going to continue April 8th, 2025, 7 p.m. in this room. Our next meeting, again, will be February 11th, 2025. Zoning board members will get a packet delivered to them. With that, motion to adjourn?
I move.
Mr. Wiley, Mr. Bongiorno. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.